Greetings, Imagination Con. Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, the as yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and welcome. Well, here you are in the Robservatory. Welcome to all you imagination connoisseurs, all you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. I have a very special Robservations. It's episode 894. I have a very special guest tonight. You could call him a very storied man. He is a writer, a director. He's written Batman comics. He took over the Mike Hammer series from Mickey Spillane. He took over the Dick Tracy comic strip for the Chicago Tribune, which he wrote for a number of years. And I just found out that he was on Truth or Consequences, and no one picked him. So I guess that means he won. I don't know. But he also got Patty Duke to come back and, well, to be in a movie because he wondered what would happen to the bad seed when she grew up. Did I say Patty Duke? I meant Patty McCormick. Sorry about that. But anyway, please welcome. Put your hands together. Actually, don't. Just light a cigarette. Pour a bourbon. Whatever you want to drink. Please welcome Max Allan Collins, the writer of Road to Perdition. Max, welcome. You're an imagination connoisseur. Welcome to Robservations, episode number 894.
I'm thrilled to be here. You know, I'm a big fan. I've made that very, very clear. Your soothing voice does not put me to sleep. It keeps me interested.
Well, you know, it's funny that we have a weird story of how we actually met. Now, I was aware of you because I think the first time I was aware of you was in the 80s because I collected Batman comics. And this is a comic about, I think this is Batman 412, an 80s Batman comic. Is it Dave Cockrum who did the art?
Yes.
And, of course, X-Men artist extraordinaire, drawn Batman for you, this character Mime. And then, of course, another thing that you wrote in the 80s that also that I was a big fan of was Miss Tree. This was in the indie comics world. This had come out, and there was really interesting stuff in that sort of 80s comic renaissance. This being unusual because it was a mystery detective female protagonist, Miss Tree, which was not something that we saw. And so that's the first time I'd heard your name and was aware of you, but I wasn't aware of your connection with Mickey Spillane or that you had done Dick Tracy. And then the movie novelizations that you've written, I mean, absolutely incredible. And I just got to ask you, you have written so much, and you have such a diversity and a wide range of things. You also are a film director. I mean, the Mommy series, which you directed. Hey, here's some great physical media. So I've even got Max Allan Collins' physical media. So I guess the first question I would have for you is, where did it all begin, Max? Where is the secret origin story of Max Allan Collins? I mean, I don't think you were shot here from a distant planet, were you?
Close. My mother, the late Patricia Collins, had during the war had been in San Diego when my dad was in the Navy, and she read Dick Tracy in the newspapers there. It was not in the Iowa newspapers. She lived in Iowa, as I live in Iowa still to this day. And when I was a little boy, she would read to me at night. And the two things she read that really took purchase, I would say, she read me Tarzan, real Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan books, and she encouraged me to read her favorite comic strip, Dick Tracy. Now, she'd probably be arrested today because I was like 6, 7 years old, and Dick Tracy is an incredibly violent comic strip. The bullets are flying out. I loved the way the bullets would enter the body and twirl out the back, and they were crazy comics. And at that point, that was the height of the whole seduction of the innocent thing,
right?
Where Parents
Comics are
Magazine
evil; they're polluting the minds of children.
Every month, Parents Magazine would have a list of the worst comics, and Dick Tracy would always be number 3 or 4. And so I became obsessed with Dick Tracy, and wanted to be a cartoonist. And my mom gathered up, I think, 4 or 5 drawings I had done of Dick Tracy when I was 7, and she sent them to Chester Gould, the creator of Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
And said, this is, my son is a huge fan, and his 8th birthday is coming up. And he sent me, on my 8th birthday, a drawing of Dick Tracy, an elaborate drawing of Dick Tracy, with a letter within the letter where Dick Tracy was writing me, telling me I drew his picture better than anybody my age.
Wow.
And then I began having a correspondence with Chester Gould, which I had for a couple of years. And I always liked Dick Tracy. And then, of course, it came around that I met him later after my first couple books were out. I sent him the books, and he invited me and a friend of mine, Matt Masterson, to visit him at the Tribune Tower. And I used to go in every year and have lunch with him, or maybe even more than that, 2 or 3 times a year. And out of that kind of grew the fact that I was offered the writing job when he decided to retire. So that's a real full circle. I mean, that's just crazy. But I had been preparing for that job since I was 7 years old, 7 years old.
It's amazing. I love hearing stories like that because, here a lifelong fan, and you wound up actually writing this comic.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows that, I don't know. I mean, I've had the same experience where I was able to contact people, and I think with the internet, it makes it even easier.
Sure.
That you can reach out to people and actually sometimes make a connection with them, and you never know where it's going to lead, but you have to make that you have to put forth the effort.
Yeah. The other one was Mickey Spillane.
Yeah, I want to get to that.
It kind of grows out of comics because he was a comics writer, and he was, I mentioned Seduction of the Innocent, which is the Dr. Frederick Wortham attack on comic books. He attacked one American fiction writer, Mickey Spillane. Everything else was comics.
Now tell us, because I mean, I hate that I have to ask you, but could you give us a brief overview of who Mickey Spillane was and why he was significant at the time he was, and how just influential his work was?
Well, Mickey had been a comic book writer and was still a comic book writer at the time. He actually wrote some comics even after the first couple of Mike Hammer books came out. He worked for Marvel primarily, and he created a comic book called Mike Danger that he couldn't sell. He was not able to sell it, but he believed in it. And he wanted to build a house in New Jersey, and he needed $1,000 to buy this prefab house. And yeah, I know. And he built it, and he decided, I'll write a mystery novel. Now there's 2 stories. There's always a couple of stories with Mickey. He claimed he wrote it in 9 days. Some of his friends say it was 18 days. like that was a small thing to write one of the classic mystery novels in 18 days. And he showed it to I guess it was Roscoe Fawcett, who of Fawcett, Captain Marvel and all that stuff that was done by the Fawcett Company in the comic book field. And it was shown to a couple editors and publishers, and the general feeling was, wow, this is in terrible taste, but people would buy it. That was the general review. And he got, I think, $2,500 for doing the first book, which unfortunately is, kind of money you can still kind of get sometimes for writing a book. But he was adamant about it coming out in paperback, and they brought it out in hardcover. And he thought that was kind of a disaster, because he thought he had looked at during the war, how the men would carry the paperbacks around in their, in their duffel bag. And he said they'd go to the PX and buy, and get these cheap paperbacks. He said that's going to be the coming thing. They've trained to read these cheap paperbacks. Well, a year after The Jury came out in hardcover and didn't sell many, and maybe 5,000 copies, it came out in paperback from Signet and just blew the roof off. I mean, millions of copies within a year. And they had actually rejected his second book, and then would you please give us the book? And then he said, no, I'm going to put on, someday you can have it maybe. And he didn't give it to him. And it didn't get published until 1966, the second My Camera book.
Wow.
This is 1950. This is 47, 48. And anyway, it exploded to the degree with its noir private eye, and very sexy, very violent, shocking, famous ending. Very famous ending.
Don't say what it is, though.
I won't. But it still shocks, and it's very imitated. If you're not shocked by it, it's because 100 people have copped it. So Mickey began writing more of these, but at the same time, there was a real rush by publishers to imitate Mickey, and Gold Medal Books came out, and even companies like Dell and so all these paperback companies of the early 50s, it was all about serving the market that Mickey Spillane had revealed. And so at the same time, what's really unusual to me is you had the right wing hating him because it was filthy, sexy books. You had the left wing hating him because sometimes My Camera went after commies. Now commies, in the My Camera books, he only dealt with them as bad guys a couple of times. They were just blue meanies. I mean, he was not a super sophisticated guy in that way. He was just the last of the great pulp writers, and I've had writers who hate his work tell me, but I can't stop reading him.
Right.
So.
Well, and you told me the story. I mean, this is great. Here, I just have his the Wikipedia page up, and I love this. Yeah. It says, the My Camera series proved hugely successful during the 50s and 60s, but the books were excoriated by the literary establishment. Malcolm Cowley of the New Republic called Spillane a dangerous, paranoid, sadist, and masochist. And even his own editors sometimes found his novels distasteful. And then, of course, the movie Kiss Me Deadly, came out.
Which is basically a left-wing attack on Mickey Spillane by Robert Aldrich and A.I. Bezzarides, but they accidentally made the greatest My Camera movie of all time.
Yeah.
Because they had to serve the Spillane audience, and Ralph Meeker was a very good My Camera, and it's definitely my favorite My Camera movie, and it's in my top 5, easy. And a late film noir, it's like 55. And it had kind of played out. Noir had kind of played out that first cycle by then.
I mean, he was in an episode of Columbo.
Yeah. He was an actor. He he was in a movie called Ring of Fear,
Yeah.
he was very good friends with John Wayne, and at the height of Mickey's celebrity, John Wayne hired him to basically play Mickey Spillane. Who are you going to get to play Mickey Spillane but Mickey Spillane in this circus movie? It's quite bad, but his stuff is really good. And the reason his stuff is really good is that when they put it together, it kind of didn't work. And they call, I think Wayne probably called Mickey and said, "Could you fix this?" And Mickey rewrote half the movie with basically himself as the main thing. And if you look at the 40 minutes of Mickey Spillane movie in Ring of Fear, it's pretty cool. And everything else is just this boring circus. Here's a tightrope walker, and here's Clyde Beatty and his lions and tigers. So then Mickey would be on like Milton Berle and shows like that. And I know he did like a Lifebuoy commercial, and he did all this kind of crazy stuff. And he was very not really justified, but he thought all of the My Camera movies were bad.
Right.
Now he was wrong, because Either Jury with Biff Elliott is a good one. I mean, obviously, Kiss Me Deadly is a good one. My Gun is Quick with Robert Bray is pretty weak, but Darren McGavin as My Camera on the TV show in the late 50s was quite good. But he said, only person who can really play My Camera is me.
Right.
So he made, so he starred as My Camera in The Girl Hunters, which was also the comeback book after he'd not written books for 10 years. And he's actually, I think he's really great in it. I mean, the idea that if you can imagine somebody who's not really a professional actor being at every frame of a 100-minute movie,
Oh yeah.
and carry it on their back, it's crazy. And then he would do things like Columbo and so on. And then I used him in the two Mommy movies.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it'd be great to talk to somebody who actually got to direct Mickey Spillane in a movie. If only I had somebody like that here, which I do. So
there's actually a good story about that. We were promoting the Mike Danger we did a Mike Danger comic book together, which we did as a science fiction version of.
Wait, tell us how you met him. How'd you meet him?
Okay, that's so I wrote him fan letter after fan letter after fan letter, nothing, dead silence. And so by the time then my first two books came out, and frankly the two people I sent the books to were Chester Gould and Mickey Spillane. My mentor,
Chester Gould, who from all the way back to 7 years old.
Yeah, and so after probably 100 letters to him, because I started reading Mickey Spillane a lot earlier than I should have. I was 12, so I used to lie about my age to buy his books. Say, I'm 16, and I'd be, I'm 16, one of those. And so the BoucherCon, which is the big mystery convention that is held every year in different cities, was in Milwaukee that year. And that was the height of when Mickey was doing the Miller Lite commercials, which was really the biggest thing in his acting career for 18 years.
Right.
He was 18 years.
I remember seeing those.
Commercial, he was the linchpin of those commercials with Lee Meredith as the beautiful doll. And, so the convention said, well, maybe we can get Miller Lite to bring him into the convention. He had never done a fan convention. He felt he was kind of hated by the aficionados of mystery fiction, the critics, and so he would do signings at Woolworths or Kresge's. That's where he'd do his signings. So he was going to be a guest, and they came to me and said, well, because I had written a lot of stuff about him, defending him.
Right.
And so they came to me and said, would you be the liaison between the convention and Mickey Spillane? And I said, well, of course, I'd be happy to. I was terrified. The night before, I did not sleep a wink, because I thought, it's so dangerous to meet your heroes. And I've met some who are just absolute fucking jerks, and it crushes you inside.
I know.
And
I have to tell you, there's not you, but a good proportion of the heroes that I've met in my life that have disappointed me have been writers.
I see that. I see that.
Well, it's
I don't like any of them. They're the competition. So they could go screw themselves.
It's funny because when you read, like, for me, I'm one of those readers that if I like an author, I have to read everything that they've written.
Yeah,
and when you do that, then you become you clearly they're speaking only to you.
Yeah,
and you develop a relationship with these people, and when you I'll tell you, the first person that, like, I'm a huge Howard Chaykin fan. I love Howard Chaykin's comics. And American Flag, his comic in the early 80s, first comic, it really changed my life in terms of the graphic design work, Ken Brusinak's lettering, the storytelling. I loved it so much. And he was at a convention here in LA, just one of these, Bruce Schwartz used to put on these monthly conventions, and I went to meet him, and it was like when he was doing Black Kiss. And, I took a few American Flag comics down, and he was in the worst mood of his life. I think he'd just gotten a divorce, and I went up to him and I was like, because I'm usually pretty good at bonding with people.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, Mr. Chaykin, I gotta tell you, the American Flag comics, your artwork, the layout, what you did with panel design and your character design. I mean, I love this comic so much, and it was whatever. It's fine. I was just like,
doing a personal appearance.
I mean, and it's like, I'm like, it's fine, and it was so. I love the storylines. I mean, I think this is so prophetic, and the skewering of American culture. It was so great, and things like RoboCop had come out already, and I'd said, clearly so much of what you had done was sort of taken by movies like RoboCop, and he's like, yeah, I got nothing for it. He's just like this bitter. I couldn't connect with him, and subsequently I've met him and I've actually interviewed him, and he's a totally different guy. He's too much, but at that time,
that's true. At different phases of all of our lives, we're different people at different phases. And I had heard a lot of the stories about Mickey. There's a famous story about him during the 50s or early 60s, where somebody sent him the first 6 books, which are even then valuable. The first editions of I, the Jury, Kiss Me Deadly, My Gun is Quick, One Lonely Night, all those books, to please autograph them with postage, return postage, which is a nice thing to do. And all of you who want books from me, that's the thing to do, is to send me the postage. But Mickey returned them, and he had shot his .45 through all of the books. So they all had a bullet hole.
That's right, pretty great, though.
and send them back to the guy. You want Mike? This was shot with my camera's .45. And so I didn't know what I was going to be into, right, with him. But after I sent him those first 2 books of mine, the first 2 Nolan books, he wrote me a lovely full-page, single-spaced letter on the Mickey Spillane stationery, welcoming me to the business. And
wow.
It was an incredible day in my life. Then I kept writing him again. Dead silence. I mean, I got my letter. He paid me respect, but now he was not going to barely be bothered with me. So when they asked me to be the liaison, I didn't know, between the convention and Mickey, I just did not know what it would be like. So we went to the hotel room, knocked on the door, and he came to the door. He's very wide shouldered. He was not a tall man, but he was, he looked like a tank. And the person representing the convention said, well, Mickey, this is, we want you to meet the liaison between the convention and yourself. This is the mystery writer, Max Allan Collins. And Mickey says, oh, I've known Max we've corresponded for years. And I said, yeah, that's right, Mickey. 1 letter from you and 100 letter from me. and that was a risk, and shows what a smart ass I can be. but he loved me.
Yeah, I bet he loved that.
He loved me for that, and we spent so much time together at the convention. My wife got jealous, literally jealous, and then when I started going down to visit him, probably once every 3 or 4 months, I went down with James Traylor, who he and I wrote the first book on Spillane, and interviewed him, and he had so much energy, this man, and he would have been, no, I don't know how old he would have been, but he was definitely well into his 60s. Because he died in his 80s, late 80s, and I very early on when we were interviewing him, I took Jim aside and said, Jim, you're going to have to interview him during the day, and I will take over at night, because he was just cleaning our clocks. I mean, his energy level was beyond just out of sight, and it took. And we were two, probably in our 30s or at least early 40s, not any older than that. And we couldn't handle it. We just could not handle it. And he always was that way. When we went down to shoot the documentary about him, Mike Hammer's Mickey Spillane, which incidentally is coming back out in December in a new version. He's standing over there, and he's a little guy, and he wasn't as imposing in his later years. He's pretty imposing, but not as he must have been when he was in his 30s or 40s. and this little group was around me who were the filmmakers, the kids from Des Moines who were going to shoot spend all this time shooting his interview, and they were all talking about what they were going to do in nearby Myrtle Beach, big party town. Oh, we're going to have incredible time. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. And I said to them, "Excuse me, you see that little old man over there? He is going to beat your ass. You're in for it. So if you think you're going to have a good time tonight, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to bed by about 9, because you got to get up at 7 the next morning." And the next day they came in dragging. He was just still, and he would have been in his late 70s then, a force of nature. And that's really, it was, and to meet somebody who had that effect on popular culture. I mean, there's no James Bond without him.
Right.
And there's no John Shaft, there's no Jack Reacher. I mean, you can name them all. Because what he did was 2 things. Mike Hammer was a guy who slept with the women, didn't talk about it, he didn't flirt with them, he slept with them, okay? It's after the war now. The men have a different attitude. That's why those ex-GIs, they wanted to see the hero get laid. They did not want to see him flirt.
No.
And the other thing was, again, after the war, he just shot the bad guys. Just killed them.
Right.
That was it.
Well, that's why they called him a degenerate.
Yeah.
But
how much did that get into the culture, the way the avenging heroes are?
Oh, no, 100%. Now, how did you wind up taking over writing books from him?
Well, we were very good. We got to be very good friends, and we would. And I think, and he had a friend named Dave Garrity who was another writer, and I said, Dave, why does Mickey like me? I mean, I'm a liberal. He's extremely conservative. We're very different generations, and he said because he lived down in South Carolina, and he said he could talk writing with you. You're the only person he talks writing with. And so we would go up, and he had a 3rd floor, one of his 3 offices. And he would tell me stories, and he would tell me Mike Hammer stories he hadn't written yet, particularly the endings, because he was so great at endings. And basically what happened was he sent a few unfinished Mike Hammer books home with me. And I mean, it'd be like, and there hadn't been a Mike Hammer book published since... Well, I think it's about early 70s. There hadn't been one for a long time. And so he was sending these. So I'm reading Mike Hammer.
Now, what time frame? So there wasn't a Mike Hammer book.
Oh, this would have been early 90s.
Okay.
So there'd been
so,
maybe 20 years between books.
And it's interesting because has there been 2 Mike Hammer TV series?
Yes.
So there was one in the 50s.
Darren McGavin, excellent.
And then there was one in the 80s.
There were actually 3 different ones, all starring Stacy Keach, who became kind of the I think he's the go-to person. And I got to do those 2 projects with him, which was really great.
Now,
great man.
And so you took over the Mike Hammer series. Now, what I found really interesting, and this was after I got to know you, but we'll get into that later, this was pretty exciting. So for the folks at home, there's a company, they're sort of the de facto production entity that's financing most of Paramount's big movies. They finance this Mission Impossible films. They finance, and I'm not judging, but they finance the Star Trek movies and the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. They finance a lot of...
favorite of yours, I believe.
Yes, but they finance... It's David Ellison's company. David Ellison is the son of Larry Ellison from Oracle. And there's also Megan Ellison, who has Annapurna. So they both the siblings started different film companies, but Skydance has been very, very successful. And I was sort of tickled after I started talking to you to see this in Deadline. Skydance lands the rights to Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer book series with plans to develop a feature film around the iconic Private Eye. And it says, the first line of this article says, Skydance has acquired the rights to Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins' Mike Hammer franchise, with plans to develop and produce the best-selling book series as a feature film based on the iconic character. No writers, directors, or actors are attached at this time. Now, when I saw this, I mean, you and I, we have a project together. We're doing a project together. I'll tell you right out. We'll talk about what that is in a minute, or not in a minute. And we were already on the way toward doing this project when this thing dropped. And you'd alluded to it, but I'm like, I didn't really take it. I'm like, okay, you're going to make a movie because you've made movies and you've been involved. Road to Perdition, you wrote the graphic novels based on, but I didn't realize it was like Skydance. It was David Ellison, and that was very, very cool. So you're still carrying Mickey Spillane's torch, and the Mike Hammer character seems to be well in hand.
Well, it's interesting because my name wouldn't be on there because there's a lot of series that have been continued. They've continued Robert B. Parker's Spencer, and they continue all these things, but very successfully, some of these have been, but nobody is identified with those characters particularly. What happened in my case was Mickey, for reasons, and we can talk about this, but for various reasons, there were long periods where he did not write much, and there's a bunch of reasons why, but he always was noodling with ideas, and sometimes he started books and didn't finish them. So at the end of his life, he had just finished a draft of a book called The Goliath Bone, or very nearly finished it. He called me. I knew that he had pancreatic cancer. We had talked about it. And so this is obviously just a few months later. And he said, would you, if I'm gone, will you finish this book for me? I said, I don't want to have to. I hope I don't have to, but I will if that's your wishes. And then he apparently hung the phone up and said to his wife, Jane, there's going to be a real treasure hunt around here when I'm gone. And you take everything out of my 3 offices and give them to Max. He'll know what to do. And so all 13 or 14 novels I've done, Mike Hammer novels I've done, all are from Spillane manuscripts. The smallest thing has been from a Spillane, synopsis. So when it says Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins, it really is a collaboration.
Wow.
And I'm not just saying, oh well, it'd be fun to write a Spencer novel, or it would, be fun to write Sherlock Holmes. No, I'm finishing, and I don't believe I'll do anything beyond the material that he left. That was my job.
That's fascinating. Now, we should point out that last month you had a book released.
Yes, Dig Two Graves.
And here is the book. Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins. This was released last month, everybody. So go on Amazon, and however you choose to read it, listen to it, however you want to do it. My camera is an icon for our culture, according to the New York Times. It's right there on the cover. So this is Max Allan Collins and Mickey Spillane's book, Dig Two Graves. It came out last month. So that's very exciting. And the fact that Skydance is going to bring the character back yet again, 70 years later from the 50s.
That's right.
Amazing that this icon of American, this hard-boiled character that Mickey Spillane brought the world is still relevant 70 years later. It's amazing.
Well, here's why I'm part of the, Post-Geek singularity. I'm a fan. So the thing I do is when I have one of these partial manuscripts, I study it and try to figure out, when did Mickey write this? And then I insert it into because I'm that kind of, have that fanish mind. I'm going to insert it into the continuity where it belongs. So it isn't just,
Right.
That's a fan mentality, but I think it's a good mentality. It's a respectful mentality.
Well, I think that, you are a fan, and it's interesting to me that you have actually a pretty big career writing movie novelizations.
I did that for about 15 years, yeah.
Which I thought that was crazy. Now having written Dick Tracy for the Chicago Tribune, I would be remiss if I didn't show everybody that Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy film, which actually it doesn't get talked about that much in terms of comic book movies, because people forget there's not just superhero movies. Road to Perdition is based on your graphic novel. Sam Mendes, Tom Hanks, James Bond himself, and that was
Craig. I met him, yeah,
and then Daniel Craig, and then you wrote that, and that was translated into that. I love that film, but you also wrote the novelization for Dick Tracy.
Which takes don't have enough time to talk about that one. It is pretty funny though.
Well, it's great, but you've told me that, what was the novelization? You were telling me a story too of a novelization that you totally just changed. Like you wrote it. It was Dick Tracy.
It was the first novelization assignment I had, and my agent, who had never sold a novelization property before, gave me terrible advice, because he told me, he said, well, you're the Dick Tracy guy. Do whatever you want. They won't even look at it. They won't pay any attention to it. And so I went, okay. And then I wrote a book that was just vaguely like the script. Really vaguely. I did different death traps. It was stupid, but I did it. And I had turned it in, and we were getting ready to go to Nassau to research the Nate Heller book that is set in Nassau. And I got a phone call right before we left where my agent said, well, they've rejected the book. They said they only read about 40 pages and it didn't have anything to do with the movie. And they need you to do a page 1 rewrite, and they need it in 2 weeks. And I'm about to go to Nassau to research a real book, a Nate Heller book. And it was explained to me by several people who did know you really need to follow the script out the door. Now, what I learned was you could pretty much change all the dialogue, because you just say to them, which is true, movie dialogue and novel dialogue are not the same animal.
Right.
But you have to really follow the plot, even if it's gibberish, like the Dick Tracy movie was gibberish. It was a beautiful movie. I heard it described as a fantastic classic car restored in perfection, but they forgot to put the engine in. Which is, and I think that's pretty accurate about that movie, but I actually kind of like the movie. So
I did too.
I bought an ancient version, because this was a long time ago, an ancient version of a laptop. It was probably like 1K or something. And I wrote on the plane. I wrote in the hotel room. And when I should have been on the beach, I wrote it in the hotel room, and I delivered it. And then they were very happy with it. Although I did add a lot of stuff, and that's the other thing you can do as a novelization. You can always say to the person, well, you're giving me a 100-page script and you want me to turn it into a 300-page novel. Where do you think those other 200 pages are going to come from? They're going to come from my imagination, and they're going to, you'll do. It's the old Indian behind the tree thing, where in a movie the Indians, the cowboys are all talking about where they're going to be with the cattle tomorrow, and then the camera pulls back and Indian is behind the tree listening and goes away and hops on the horse and rides off, and then the cowboys are going to have a big problem the next day. Well, as a novelist, you say, well, who's the Indian? How did the Indian know to be there?
Right.
And so you have all these, and so I would just answer those questions. And that's one of the things I would do in my novels. And I did that in the Dick Tracy novel. Now, what happened with the Dick Tracy novel is just bizarre, is that you may recall that Madonna turns out to be the blank. I hate to, spoiler alert, I forgot to say spoiler alert first. But so this character, the blank, turns out to be Breathless Mahoney, who's played by Madonna. And they thought they had the biggest, greatest surprise that no one would ever guess it. I mean, you could guess it in the you could guess it in the opening credits, but they thought, and so they said you can't reveal that the Madonna is the blank. Well, that's the end of the movie. That's a whodunit, and whodunit. This is the reveal of the villain of. And I argued, and I argued, and I argued, and I argued with the producer of the movie. I argued with top people at Disney, and they insisted. And the deal I worked out with them was that I think it was if they did a printing after the movie came out, my ending could be restored. And they did. I think it's like the 8th printing or something.
Wow.
And the thing about it is, the book sold something like 800,000 copies. So I definitely, if there's a place in the Guinness Book of Records for the person who wrote a mystery novel that has no ending that sold the most copies, I'm your guy. I did it. And then the great moment was we're down at Disney World, where just about all the cast is down there, and everybody's down there. And I'm talking to one of the producers of the movie, and I said, "You know what I just saw in the movie had not opened yet. They were doing advance.
Yeah.
You know what I just saw in the hotel lobby, in the gift shop, a Dick Tracy coloring book, and in it reveals that Madonna is the blank." So the coloring book was.
Kids weren't going to go to that movie anyway. Take me. Well, so there's another thing that you have another series of books, the Quarry series of books, that was turned into a TV series for Cinemax.
Right.
The Quarry. Now, I mean, again, pretty cool. I mean, it's how did the Quarry series come about, and how did you wind up making a Cinemax series out of it?
Well, Quarry was. What happened was I had written.
And then Quarry is a little different in the series than he is in the books.
Quarry is a character based on a friend of mine who'd gone to Vietnam, a very sweet guy that came home messed up, which a lot of that went on, and also was reflected in my interest in Audie Murphy, who's another guy that went to war and came home messed up. And I just think that's an interesting, intrinsically American. Probably not intrinsically American, because anybody who goes to war is going to come back and get messed up. I mean, but we were in the midst of the Vietnam War when I did the first book, and I had been writing the Nolan series, which was kind of it's an homage to Richard Stark's Parker series.
Right.
And homage, as we all know, is ripoff in French. And I became good friends with Don Westlake too. And when I did the first book, the character died at the end, and then they wanted more. And I called Don and said, are you comfortable with me writing more of these? Because I meant it as a one-off homage. And he said, oh, it's quite different. Don't worry about it. He was a wonderful man. And I did it. And I even did a Nolan novel a few years ago. But Nolan is a professional thief. And nobody really gets killed in those books except other bad guys. And it's also third person. It's in the third person, so there's a distance. Yeah, that's Nolan.
Now, this is one of your hard
A
case.
little bit like Lee Van Cleef, they tell me. I don't see it.
It's totally Lee Van Cleef. Come on.
I don't see it. It's
These covers for these hard case crime books, this publisher, these covers are just the best things ever.
yeah.
And
I got one. Here's one right here.
I mean, this dude. How can you not see that this is Lee Van Cleef? Everyone, oh, there it is. Is that the actual painted artwork?
Yeah, that's the painting. Yeah.
How do you not see that's Lee Van Cleef? Come on.
Well, of course it's Lee Van Cleef. I met him and his wife, and he's one of the few celebrities that really scared me.
Really?
Oh yeah, he really scared me, and I had never really done an official interview before, and so I was so fanish it just must have just curdled his blood. But his wife was very sweet because she knew I had patterned the character in my books after him. He's described in the books as looking like Lee Van Cleef. and you know, my dream was that he'd maybe star in one day, and of course he's gone.
He's gone.
The point is that those books, cookbooks, they're often called, there was something safe about them. You could vicariously be a bad guy, and do terrible things, but it's only to people who deserved it and were other bad guys. There were no civilians killed.
I love that it says this is the first new Nolan novel in 33 years.
That's true.
And I love you signed this to me. I love by the way, thank you. You've sent me a lot of your great stuff, and you've signed every one of these books.
And I try to do them different.
And it's great because you wrote, Irene Jobson will appreciate this. She wrote, I began this series in 1969. All right, Irene. You know what I'm talking about. And here I am writing another. So thank you for that. And but again, this hard case crime, what I love about this label, Stephen King's on this label, my friend Dave Scow's on this label, you're on this label. Hard case crime, these books are, I mean, they're throwbacks to a different era, yet they're also modern. This is a great publisher.
Well, when they started out, they did, I don't know, I think they did Earl Stanley Gardner. Everybody was dead except me. Okay. and they did the first two Nolan books as in one volume. And then Charles R. Dye, the editor, came to me and said, what else of yours can we reprint? And I said, don't reprint anything. Let me write something new for you. Just give me the money you would give me for the reprint, because and I still only get basically reprint money for these books, but we get nice royalties, so who cares? But the idea of Quarry was that unlike Nolan, the books are in the first person.
Mm.
You've got to be in his skin, and he's a murderer. He's a hitman. And in the first chapter, first chapter of the first book, he kills a priest in an airport. So, and it was really designed to be like, okay, this is your chance to get off the train. Okay, if you're not up for this, and there are people that really hate those books. A lot of people really like them. And one of the things I really like is that he is a likable, normal guy who got fucked up in Vietnam, basically. And like my friend did.
Yeah.
Like Audie Murphy did. And when I met Dave Morrell, who actually went to school or taught school in Iowa City, 30 miles from me, and that's why I used to see him now and then.
Dave Morrell, the writer?
The writer, right.
First Blood, Dave Morrell?
First Blood. Yeah, we got together and we decided we were we at the same time have patterned our heroes after Audie Murphy. which is kind of interesting, you know. And we did a panel about
He wrote
it.
some good horror novels too.
He's a good writer, and
Yeah.
he's a sweet guy. A sweet guy. A lot. I mean, it's amazing how many writers are really nice. I don't like to encourage them though.
Well, so you had Quarry. You know, you've got. Tell me about. Okay, here is. I don't know if this is the original cover, but here's the Vertigo Crime cover for Road to Perdition, and art by Richard Piers Rayner. And this is great artist. And is this the first edition of the comic? Or the first edition of the graphic?
That's the current edition, although it was the same. It really was the same art. It has coloration.
That's what I meant. But
it's so how did I get there? Well, in 1993, I got fired from the Dick Tracy strip by a new editor came in, and you know how I have to tell you, new editors often come in and clean house.
Yeah.
And and I resented it a great deal, because when they approached me with a 5-year contract back in the day, they said, we want you to know that it's unlikely that it'll go 5 years. So don't count on 5. It's a 5-year contract, but don't count on 5 years. Well, I got 15 years out of it.
Yeah, I was going to say
that strip. And there's a movie, and this guy came in and made my life miserable and fired me. And in his defense, I told him off on the phone, to the degree of later my son, when he graduated high school and he went to college, someone said, what do you miss about not living at home? He says, I miss hearing my father fire himself on the phone. and I definitely did it more than once. So I that was my bread and butter. 2 days a week I worked on Dick Tracy, and I could have not done anything else. It was a good paycheck. So I needed to do something. And the next day I lost my Heller contract. And so I had nothing. I went from everything as a freelance writer to nothing. And I went to one of the conventions. I think it was WonderCon, which I think is in Oakland.
It was, and then they moved it to San Francisco, the Moscone Center. Now it's here in Anaheim, but it started out as a fan-run convention in Oakland.
So I went there, and an editor from DC wanted to have a meeting with me, and so I took it, and he said, well, you're the only person in comics who's really written much crime fiction in recent years, and we're going to do a series of noir graphic novels. Do you want to do one? That I want to do one, and so I pitched him. I swear, I pitched him off the top of my head, Road to Perdition, because two things. I'd been reading a lot of manga, including Lone Wolf and Cub. And then I'd also, in researching Heller, I read about the guy that Paul Newman played in the movie, whose name was John Rooney, but in real life his name was John Looney, and he had a son named Connor, who was nicknamed Crazy Connor, because apparently having a last name Looney didn't carry it enough. And so I kind of put those two things together, and the whole John Woo thing. I was very big into John Woo. No one knew who John Woo was, I don't think.
Because that's a hard-boiled era.
Everybody was
the babies
around VHS tapes and saying, you got to see this, and so it was very underground.
It was. It's funny that you say that, because that's what I think I read somewhere that you had said this, because that was the thing that struck me. I remember because I was really into Lone Wolf and Cub, because First Comics had brought over the Lone Wolf and Cub manga, and Frank Miller was doing the covers.
Right.
And those are the oversized versions, and then they released the digests, because the oversized version, they didn't finish it, and then there was you had to go get, because I love Shogun Assassin. Okay, for those of you people who don't know, there's a manga called Lone Wolf and Cub that was also turned into 5, 6 6?
I don't remember 5 or 6. They're wonderful.
Yeah, 5 movies in Japan and a TV series. But the first 2 of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies were combined into Shogun Assassin. That these producers had bought the rights and they redubbed the movies and they combined these 2 movies. And look, I would never tell anybody to watch a reworked, dubbed version of anything, with one exception. And the exception is Shogun Assassin. Now, Criterion did a box set of all the Lone Wolf and Cub movies, and they put in Shogun Assassin, which came out in 1980. And Shogun Assassin has this disco synthesizer score. And
It's by I think it's by Mark Lindsay from
Paul Revere and the Raiders. Yeah. The score's incredible. And Sandra Bernhard, the female comic, does like multiple voices in the movie of the female characters. And then one of the producers got his son to voice Daigoro, Ido Ogami's kid. And the funny thing is they would feed him the lines and he would read the lines back and say them. I to this day maintain it's the greatest vocal performance by a little kid in the history of cinema. But
you need to watch Mommy sometime, because I stole from that particular movie by having the little girl, because the premise of Mommy is the bad seed backwards. So
Right.
the Patty McCormick,
Just
who
had
was
it
the
where it
bad
was.
seed, the little girl, she's the mommy, she's the mother, and then she's got a little girl, and instead of the mother slowly realizing that her daughter is a serial killer, the little girl realizes slowly that her perfect mommy, her country club mommy, is a serial killer. and she the little girl narrates the movie.
And this is the
I
25th
totally got
anniversary. And I do want to point out that this, as we love on physical media, I should have had this on, but since you're here, this does have a reversible cover, which Dieter Bastian would love. By the way, you're going to have to get one of these for Dieter and sign it,
I'll do it. I'll be glad to.
because I know you're a big fan.
And look at the portrait of mommy and the little girl that we had taken by a local. Look at the disc. we went to like one of the local shops that does that kind of thing.
That's hysterical. Now, I also want to point out something that we've never really talked about, but you wrote for Tim Lucas's Video Watchdog.
I did do a little bit for him.
Yeah,
What a great magazine.
I
Much
worship,
missed.
I worshipped the ground that Tim Lucas and his wife Donna walk on, and I think the first issue Twin Peaks, something like that. And Video Watchdog was like the greatest magazine ever. And then Tim Lucas spent 20 years writing a book on Mario Bava called All the Colors of the Dark. That's one of the great film books ever made.
Yep.
I have it. It's right over there. And I mean, you can, if you had no barbells in your house, you could just use that book and lift. It's so huge. But I love Video Watchdog, and I know you contributed to it a little bit. So
Yeah, they did they let me write about the My Camera movies. And
Yeah.
I did put him on the cover, put Mickey on the cover, which
Yep.
is really great. Because it's an area of pop culture. I mean, I don't even know how much of the audience knows what a big deal My Camera was.
well,
I mean,
it really is. I mean, there was the 80s TV series, like we said, with Stacy Keach, the multiple shows. But I think that Mike Hammer has fallen completely out of the pop culture memory. Unfortunately.
except for Kiss Me Deadly.
Except for, yes, and Criterion, the releases of Kiss Me Deadly. But I don't think people know that that's part of a much larger series, or it's not like a Bond series. And Kiss Me Deadly is a great film. I mean, it's, of that era, it's such a great movie. But even these kids today. So what's going to be really interesting is if Skydance really does get a period Mike Hammer movie off the ground.
That'd be fabulous.
I mean, it would be incredible, because fans of that movie then have this treasure trove of shows and movies and books to go back and rediscover for the past 70 plus years.
Well, you mentioned James Bond, and James Bond there's an interesting aspect of Mike Hammer and James Bond, because during this period of time, which someday we'll talk about why Mickey didn't write for 10 years, didn't write novels for 10 years. His publisher, Signet, started publishing the Ian Fleming books, basically promoting him as this is the British Mickey Spillane. This is, James Bond is the British Mike Hammer.
Right.
And they used the same cover artist that was doing the Mike Hammers at that time. So Mike Hammer paved the way for for James Bond. And Kiss Me Deadly kind of has some stuff in it, like that kind of presages James Bond as well. And Shirley Eaton plays in both The Girl Hunters and Goldfinger.
Yeah.
And and I loved James Bond for that reason, because Mickey wasn't writing. And so I made my parents take me on a Thursday night, drive me 35 miles to the area opening of Dr. No. And I've been reading all those books, and nobody but me in the school knew who James Bond was. And I had to be there opening night. My parents, I harangued them. I got to see this. And the minute Sean Connery said Bond, James Bond, I was over the moon. Over the moon. Totally over the moon.
I'm
Does this resonate at all, Mr. Burnett?
I'm right there with you. I mean, it's I have an original Dr. No one sheet movie poster in our media room. That's one of my prized possessions. It's under.
I wish I had one to hang above my first edition of Casino Royale, signed by Ian Fleming.
Oh, nice! Ooh, wow, that's and that was the first Bond book published.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So those
are nice. Do you know those editions? Those really nice box set editions.
They're gorgeous and so expensive. Yeah. I've looked. Now there's some questions that people have been flying in, because there's this is a really good. Actually, there's a couple of good questions here. Superhero Displays is a new member of the channel. Thank you, Superhero Displays. Tom Jr. Jackson, our moderator, said, I had Max's Dick Tracy book that he wrote. So Tom had it. And Irene Jobson, who's here, says, I am here for the 69s. I know you are, Irene. I know you. And that's why we love you. 200 Watt Studios, 2 questions. One, he says, wonderful to see Max Allan Collins here. Among everything else, I loved your columns in Video Watchdog. Oh. So that's very cool. But then he goes on to say, this is really interesting. This is a good question. Max, how much influence did Mike Hammer have on characters like Lemmy Caution, who was the detective in Alphaville? Did you ever see that? Good art.
Oh yeah, oh sure. I have the more obscure ones that I have all of the Lemmy Caution movies.
Yeah.
And I think that they had a big effect on them in the 50s, but they actually did predate Hammer, because
interesting.
Peter Cheney was there were these several authors. James Hadley Chase, you probably remember that, who wrote No Orchids for Miss Blanchard.
Yep.
At it, and it was the Robert Aldrich movie again, which was, what is the name of that movie? But yeah. It's a great movie that probably had no good reviews, but it also came from, there were several of these authors that were huge overseas, who were writing their style of American books, American tough guy noir. They got published over here in a minor way because they never took off, because they didn't really sound like American. James Hadley Chase, it didn't really sound right, because he was a British guy. And, so overseas, where they didn't know the difference, huge. But yeah, Lemmy Caution is, and Eddie Constantine?
Yeah.
Interesting actor. He was a singer, too.
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for that one, 200 Watt Studio. He's a longtime important member of this community. Now, okay, since we have to you have a new book that comes out today. And let me get it. And again, Hard Case Crime. You can get this in both soft cover or hard cover. The new book is Too Many Bullets. Again, look at these banger covers, man.
Paul Mann is the man's name.
Paul Mann, who does this. Is this following up the Big Bundle?
Yes.
Another great cover. Now, this is, as you explained to me, the 19th Nathan Heller novel.
Right.
Original series to you. Tell us who Nathan Heller is.
Well, Nathan Heller is a Chicago private detective. He is, in the beginning of the series, he's in his 20s. He's probably about 27. And as it goes through his life, he ages naturally. And that allows him to be in a lot of interesting places. I think you called him like the Zelig of
Zelig being Woody Allen's character who finds himself, or even in a way Forrest Gump, but different, in all these different historical moments.
But the best way I can explain it is that I was teaching at a community college here in Muscatine, Iowa, where I live, little town. And so that I didn't go nuts, I decided to do a section of literature, mystery fiction, and a section of science fiction, so that I could have them have the students relate to the stuff that they would have a good time with. I felt that they should be taught that reading is fun,
fundamental.
Yeah. So I was doing, the Maltese Falcon, and I think he did, and then there were none, and I did a bunch of well-known books. They always let Mickey Spillane best, though. That's interesting too, because they were much, this is in the early 70s. So I'm rereading all of these books so that I could teach them, and I'm looking at the indicia page of Maltese Falcon, and it says copyright 1929, and I thought, oh, so that's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. That means that Al Capone and Sam Spade were contemporaries, and that was what I call my light bulb moment, where I thought, okay, and there already had been Chinatown and a couple of things that were starting to look at the private eye and period. Well, I thought, well, I can go beyond just private eye and period. I can do them in history. And then it was an easy step to let's find crimes, famous crimes in history that are controversially solved or unsolved. And so that's where he came from. And then, so I started him quite young so that I could take him up through the years. And all of these 19 are fairly major crimes. There are some short stories where the crimes aren't major. They're real. I've never done a Nate Heller story that wasn't fact-based. And a lot of research goes into these stories. And I have people say to me, oh, Max, you must love to do research. I don't love to do research. I love to read nonfiction. I love to read fiction, but I don't love to do research. But I stumbled onto this, and I think as popular as Quarry is, I really feel that Heller, if I have any kind of literary legacy, this is it. This is something I figured out. And I do him again in the first person. And I was told by Don Westlake, who knew his stuff, I shouldn't write a private eye novel of that length, 100,000 words. But I said, no, I think I can hold the reader in that persona that long. And I think I might have told you this story, Rob, when I gathered around some people to help me on the research. One was a guy who lived in Chicago, and I knew him through comics collecting, comic art collecting. And I said, I'm going to write about a Chicago private eye in the 30s and 40s and 50s. He said, well, what's the story? And I said, well, he's going to be on the force, and police force. He's going to quit because of the corruption. And he started to laugh. Oh, Max, you don't understand anything about Chicago. You get on the force for the graft. not you don't that's why you want to be on the force, and particularly in the Depression. And so that's that I began to have he began to be a more interesting character. He could be someone that is not perfect, and he takes a bribe. He'll do these things that you're not supposed to do when you're a private eye, but ultimately he does the right thing.
Right.
And it's usually rough justice, because when you're trying to write accurately about history, then the ending's kind of written for you. So you got to figure out a way to be clever, and so that he can serve up some rough justice that he has to be able to do. He's not going to ever. He can't change history. I won't do that.
No, well, you're not Quentin Tarantino,
Oh, I love that. By the way.
I do. Look, I
love that movie. I love that movie. We know what movie we're talking about.
Both Inglourious Bastards and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Well, I don't know if you were like this in that movie. I sat there like dreading to get to the killing. A lot of people had to be thinking, I'm loving this movie, but I'm dreading the last 15 minutes. And then he turns it on its ass. And my wife, who would not go to that movie because she didn't want to experience the Sharon Tate murders and all that stuff. Then I took her. I said, just trust me, ask me no questions, trust me. And she loved it. Just loved it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it was.
We're talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but then also in Inglourious Bastards when they killed the Nazis. It was great too. So I guess this is an interesting story, because you and I didn't know each other.
No.
And I had no idea that it's always surprising to me. Like, I've heard from a couple of pretty producers in Hollywood. There's one in particular that I become friendly with, that he corrected me on something, to be honest.
Which means he's watching you.
He was watching the show, and I had forgotten he was working with the director, and I had whose name was put forward to do a big Marvel movie. And I had forgotten that this director was in the middle of another project with this producer, and he called me up to make sure that I was corrected. And I welcome that. Like, if I'm wrong about something, I have no problem admitting it and telling. I want to correct the record. And so you never know, like when you're doing these YouTube shows, you never know who's watching. And this has happened a lot where people that I've known who they are, I'm like, oh my God, you watched my YouTube show? And so tell the folks at home how you and I became acquainted.
Well, I stumbled across you on YouTube, and I think you're probably talking about Star Trek, and I'm a Star Trek original cast Star Trek fan, as is my wife Barb. And I just was fascinated, and I thought, well, this guy seems to agree with everything I'm thinking, which must mean he's really brilliant.
Good man.
And I just thought, and then my wife would come in and sit down and say, his voice is soothing, and and so I was really, really enjoying it and really digging it. And I thought, well, I'm going to write him. He's welcoming letters. I'll write him a fan letter. So I go to www.theburnettnetwork.net. Right, it's right here on the screen, and it leads me to an address in Bettendorf, Iowa. 30 miles from my house in the middle. I mean, if you throw a dart in the middle of the nation, it's going to hit my hometown. I mean, we're right on the Mississippi River.
Yeah. Right by the Quad Cities.
Quad Cities. And I also, it was Mike Bowden, who I've known for years. And I mean, going back to a project he was involved in with Terry Beatty. Terry Beatty, my artist
on Miss Tree.
Miss Tree, and who is still a very close friend of mine, and we did all kinds of projects together. There's Miss Tree again. So I'm just kind of flabbergasted by the fact that here's this guy I'm admiring, and enough that I'm going to write him a fan letter, which I don't do every day. It's last one was Mickey Spillane, remember? And so I called Phil Dingledine, who I knew was a good friend of Mike's, and said, why don't we go out to lunch with Mike? And then I want to talk to him about this crazy thing he's doing, in Hollywood. This guy in Hollywood, and so the next day we're sitting there, and he says, "Well, you want to talk to Rob?" And he pulls him up on the computer, and we're sitting in a restaurant, and I guess they started looking at us, so we moved to Phil's studio.
Yeah.
We talked for about 3 hours, and Mike and Phil are just like, these guys are going to go on forever. I have a life. I would like to return to my life, please.
Well, it was so, and somehow, because I think I don't know if the Skydance story had come out, but this is only in August.
Yeah,
this is only in August, so it's only been a couple months.
Yeah,
and somehow,
and this project is happening.
So
it's crazy.
So this is so Mike and I we've been working together since Axanar. I've known him for 9 years. When I met him on the Star Trek fan film Prelude to Axanar, and he went through all the ridiculousness of what that project has become. But we became very good friends, and we've tried to get things off the ground, and we've done various things. Like when this channel first started, it was sponsored by a men's cologne and shaving products called Lucky Tiger, which was great. So he got me sponsored by Lucky Tiger, which is great. And so Mike and I have done a lot of stuff. And for whatever reason, we've all decided, like when I was growing up, I loved radio drama. And I listened to the CBS Radio Mystery Theater, whether it was Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, whatever, any the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then I went back and would listen to like the old Shadows and all that stuff. But we were talking about like podcasts, audio scripted podcasts, and like the Sandman that's on Audible. Jessica Chastain was just in one. Wall Street Journal was talking about how, well, they're spending way too much money on these things, but they can make money. So we decided that us collectively, are going to turn your Nathan Heller novels, and we're going to start with the first two, True Detective and True Crime, and we are going to create True Noir, the Nathan Heller casebooks.
Who do you have to write these?
Well, it's funny that you ask, and I think this is what made the project appealing. I already have a marquee writer. See, for me, as a young, still at heart, independent producer, finding a marquee name in some way, shape, or form to help you push your project along is difficult. But it just so happens that I know the man that has written all 19 Heller novels, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the latest Nathan Heller novel, Too Many Bullets, was released today. And so you can get this at Amazon. And so although people probably haven't read the books yet, so go back and start with these. Or
you can read them in any order.
Oh, you can. Okay, good.
You really can't. And I would just say this, that if you have, particularly if you have some crime that you really have always been fascinated with, like the Kennedy assassination or the Lindbergh case, I've probably done it. And start there. And just see if this works. This works on you. So anyway,
we're going to turn this into scripted audio dramas that you can find hopefully on Audible. And I like to call them, they're going to be movies but without picture.
Well, you've got to have a big star for this to be able to work. I mean, my suggestion would be, since you would be get somebody from Star Trek, because I put Manju Barrett in my first movie, okay?
Right.
Because you wanted her name on the box, because those Star Trek people, and some very talented people working for Star Trek.
Well, it just so happens. It's funny that you say that. So, we're on
the same wavelength.
We're on the same wavelength, and because I was a big fan of Star Trek Picard season 3, and I had interviewed him, and I thought, after reading some of the material, the Heller stuff that you'd sent me, and we had talked about originally doing Carnal Hours,
Yeah, that
And
I think we maybe even mentioned it on air.
and that was the book. Was that the book you went to Nassau to research?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you went to Nassau. So, but then you had made the suggestion starting at the beginning because you'd brought up the idea of like Stanley Tucci, who played Frank Nitti in the audiobook? Was it the audiobook?
Well, no. Well, of course he did the
And then
audiobook.
he was also in what was the movie he was in as Nitti?
Well, Road to Perdition,
Right.
and then he read the book Road to Purgatory, which is the sequel to Road to Perdition.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
And and he's just a wonderful actor. I mean, he's
yes, we talked about it, but so I
we
reached
don't have
out.
him in our pocket yet.
No, we don't. But I reached out to Todd Stashwick, who played Captain Liam Shaw, captain of, the ship that became the Titan refit that later becomes the Enterprise G. So I reached out to Todd Stashwick, who is, he's been in so many different things. He was great as Deacon in 12 Monkeys, but he's been in so many different things. And I said, listen, man, we are going to do Max Allan Collins' Heller series as extended audio dramas. And we're going to mix these in both 5.1 and Dolby Atmos. And I got this in my head because I like to buy Bob Clearmountain's his super deluxe editions. Like he's been remastering. He did ABC's The Look of Love, and remastering them in 5.1 and Dolby Atmos. So, and they can be released then, these audio dramas, on physical media. So we can do a Blu-ray where you can get the Dolby Atmos version and listen to it. So there's no picture. But like the Sandman stories. So in order to do this, obviously, we needed to do a proof of concept, because it was our idea that while we have funding to do the first one, I have no idea. I've never produced an audio drama. I don't know what it costs, because it's all literally created in the studio.
Right.
I mean, you have to write it, so it's created in your mind. So you have to turn your own books into scripts that are audio scripts. So we had to do a proof of concept. So what did you suggest that we do? Where did the proof of concept script come from?
Well, there's my book Stolen Away, which is about the Lindbergh kidnapping, and it takes place toward the beginning of his career, of Heller's career. And it was something that it was an opening chapter that was very much like a pre-credit sequence. It was a little short story that led into the novel. And I thought, even though that's not the novel we're going to start with, we may do it eventually, but let's show him at the beginning when he's still on the pickpocket detail, and he's kind of a smart ass. He's not entirely honest. I mean, he'll shake somebody down and so they don't have to go to jail. And he's, again, a situational ethics kind of guy. I thought in a very short period of time we could have the elements you want to have, and there's some gunfire, and there's some pretty girls, and there's that stuff's going on, and it's just about what it's going to be about 15 minutes maybe.
Yeah, I would imagine something around there, 15. And that's another thing. To be honest, I did not know again how this would all shake out. Like you asked me about movies, I can tell you about movies, but audio, I mean, I know the process, but I didn't know how long it was going to take. Like how long would this thing be? And so what's really fun about all of this is that we recorded it already.
Yeah.
So we already we did it. So last Friday, we went into the studio, and here's a picture of the cast that we recorded with. There's Todd Stashwick in the middle, and you'll notice David Starzyk, who you have seen in a million different things. If you're a Veronica Mars fan, he's Dick's dad, and he got his head cut off in the last series. There's Chris Carr, who does multiple roles in the female roles in this script, and her husband Logan. So we have already recorded this, and I have to tell you, I directed it, and it was an absolute blast to record this. Because what I wanted to do, which was different than, say, animation, I didn't want everybody to record individually. I wanted to do it all together so the actors could bounce off each other. And because in the studio, they're like, you don't really need to have all these actors come in at the same time. We can just record them individually. And I said, no, we really need to do it all at the same time. And we did, and it was, what'd you think? You heard it. You heard the recording session.
I think it's great. I think it's great, and I think that Todd is really, because he's from Chicago.
Yeah, that was another reason where, and it was really interesting as we played, because we were getting everybody up to speed. So what I did was we read it from beginning to end multiple times, and I was just letting everybody get ramped up. And I told Todd, I said, listen, let's inject more Chicago into it. And he's a gifted comedian. He comes out of Second City, and so he's a great improvisation guy. And I said, listen, don't be afraid to put more Chicago in it, because at this point in Nathan Heller's life, he's younger. He's not sort of a bemused, jaded private dick. He's still, like you said. So he's in his mind, he's at the top of the world. He's trying to make his mark and show the cops he's ahead of the game, and show his superior that, look, I know what's going on, even though he doesn't. And it was so much fun. And
first part of Chinatown.
Yes, exactly. And so it really went really, really, really well, I thought. And
I'm thrilled, and I think when we get into are able to get into the longer form stuff, I think you will see that this is something new. It is a movie, but it's not quite a movie. It's a book. It's not quite a book. It's
not an audio, but it's going to be a full experience. So when you sit down and like, my desire to do this is what we're going to do. The premiere of this is I want to have people at a giant movie theater, and maybe premiere the first hour or two. And then everybody sits down, and we instead of having the projector go up, we turn it off. So we'll have the exit signs, but it'll be as pitch black as we can make it. And everybody's going to sit in a movie theater, and we're going to crank this shit up, and it's going to be in Dolby Atmos, and it's going to sound like, a movie. And I was saying to Mike, our audio engineer, not Mike Bodden, but Mike, our audio engineer, I said, listen, for me, there's two different kinds of narration. There's Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption. And that narration is kind of like he's writing a book, and the whole movie is his recollection. And, the first time I didn't think much of Andy Dufresne when I first saw him. He looked like a tall drink of water that a stiff breeze would blow him over, whatever. And that you hear that. Or there's the narration of Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now, which is, it's you're in his head while he's moving through this story. So it could be a recollection, but it's mostly his thoughts, because you hear things like when he's reading these dossiers, he's like, why the hell would he do that? When he's thinking about Kurtz, he's musing to himself. And the way you present narration in an audio space is dialogue always comes out of the front center mono channel. And I said to Mike, I go, when Nathan Heller, when we're in his head, I want his voice to fill the surround channels, and then when we go into the real world, then we hear his voice coming out of the center. And so these are things we're going to play with. And to be honest, I don't yet know if it's even going to work. And we have to make this, and it's not rocket science. There's been so many audio dramas, but I want to make this really special, and it's going to be sounding big. So,
well, I like the idea. I like the idea of bringing in immediacy to it.
Yeah.
So it's happening now, and I think you're onto something, because I've had a lot of audiobooks done, and I have some really, really good ones, but a lot of times with the first person work, like I do a lot of first person work, I'll be listening to it. I'm like, well, was that dialogue, or was that, did he say that to the person, or is that narration? And if you can define the sound of it as, so that you immediately learn, okay, that's narration sound.
Oh yeah, that's exactly correct. And that's all going to be in terms of how you're playing with the sound. And the thing is, it can be really dramatic. And I have been a little disappointed in some of the sound mixes of things I've heard music wise or in movies, because if you listen to Apocalypse Now, the dialogue when you hear Martin Sheen talking, it's so present. It's as if he's sitting in the room with you. And that's the way I want. I mean, when you hear somebody talk, I really want you to be able to hear them speak. And a great sound mix allows you to do that, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. Like right now, where I'm at right now is in the editorial phase. I'm like you had said, because you'd listen to it, there's a couple of takes that are obviously the main takes, 6, 7. And then I'm going to pick all these things, and then it goes to the audio engineers, and then they work on it. And then we'll all be able to chime in and give notes. But so what we're going to do with this is we're going to use it to promote, and also we want to send it out to places to see if there's interest in them picking it up before. But then we're going to do a crowdfunding campaign. Because to be honest, I don't know how much this is going to cost totally. And all of this has been a to see how much, because really how much studio time is there going to be? There was a lot less studio time when we recorded this than I thought. I thought we might need a full day. We didn't need a full day. We needed a couple hours because we recorded it all at once. So it's going to be a learning curve, but we're going to do a whole crowdfunding campaign, probably starting it next month, and it'll run for 2 months into the new year. I know it's going to go through the holiday, and people say no, but don't do it during that time. But it's going to be, it's going to be good. I'm very excited.
Well, I think, I don't know what point I wanted to make. I was caught up in that mellifluous voice, or however you say that word. But I think you did something like 8 takes.
Of the whole thing. We did it from beginning to end.
And I think when you get into this and are doing the longer form, you won't need that many takes.
Oh, no, not at all.
You're getting to know this process at this point.
Yeah.
And so because you'll be able to do this in a couple of takes probably.
Oh yeah, well yeah, for sure. It's just it depends how long that we're gonna go and things like that. But yeah, I would imagine that's how it would be. I mean, but it was I have to tell you, it was so much fun to do. I had so much fun with your script, and just listening to Todd Stashwick say your words and hear him bring that character to life was an absolute joy.
Yeah, and I haven't really had that before. I mean, I've had some audiobooks, and there's a guy that does the audiobook. I've been very lucky. There's one guy that's done all the audiobooks. And if you follow a series, it's nice that they've got that continuity. But other than that, a guy named Dan John Miller, and other than Dan, this is the first time anybody's enacted Heller, and no one's ever enacted Heller in a dramatic format. They've only done it reading the books, just reading the books, which I enjoy. But right. this turn, seeing it actually dramatized. I mean, we kind of had this with when Gary Sandy played Mike Hammer for us in live performance, and I said to him, "This is one of the most famous detective characters ever created, and you're the first person to play him on stage. You're the first person to ever play him in a live, dramatic sense." So, I think this is a new animal. I think we can see who its parents are. But this is going to be a new animal. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, and we are coming out. We're bringing Todd out to meet you in person. We've met
online, but
Yes.
we're going to come out and we're going to take you and your and Phil. We're going to take cameras around, and I don't know if you can. I know that traveling is kind of a pain in the ass, but we're going to come see you, and then I want you, and we'll film a conversation between you and Todd, or pardon me, digitally capture where he can ask you whatever he wants about the character, and I want the two of you to sort of have a meeting of minds, so he knows what was in your mind and on your. I mean, he can read the books, but you can obviously provide him even more than that. And I think it's going to be fun because he's a really smart guy. He's an incredibly smart, articulate guy, and he's a writer himself.
I could see from him that he took from, because he really had, what did I have, a 12, 15-page script?
Yeah.
And to represent hundreds of thousands of words that I've done about his character. And he was able to discern who this guy was to a remarkable level for just looking at a snippet, really, of material.
Yeah, he really understood it. And I think that's what's so much fun working with him, is he's just so smart. And you know, he was really a breakout. It's really funny, too. He said something really interesting, and he was talking about, I don't know if it was an acting coach or somebody he'd worked with, probably an acting coach, that said, you know, if you're playing a serious character, you always look for the humor in it. And if you're playing a humorous character, you look for the seriousness in the character. And I thought that was a really interesting way to do things. And I think the way he played Liam Shaw, and I know the writers had worked with him previously on 12 Monkeys, but still the way he played that character made that character a fan favorite. And
I mean, when you can be a standout on a show that is effectively bringing back all these beloved characters and be the person that people are talking about, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. And he's look at that cocky smile. See, that's Chicago.
Right.
And he's even wearing a Chicago t-shirt.
He was wearing a Chicago t-shirt. And by the way, him and what was really interesting, just as an kind of as an experiment, you know, when you get actors together like this, I wanted them to, because I figured we needed a little bit more, and I wanted to show. It was in your dialogue already, but it was a quick scene, and I love Stashwick and I love David Starzyk. I've known David Starzyk for 30 years, and I just want to see what they would do, because they riffed off each other really well. And there's the whole, you've set up a thing where Heller goes after this guy who's a pickpocket, and they've clearly been playing this game for a long time. And the pickpocket's stolen money and has to pay tribute. And Heller's on the take here, you know. It's like share. It's a time for a sharing of the green, father. You know, and it was great. And obviously a lot of that stuff is just superfluous, ridiculous. Maybe we'll use a line of it, but it was just fun to, like, I would have sat back and just let them riff. I would, just to see what would happen. And I did do that, actually.
The tough thing is when you've got 7 of these and you've got to pick out of the 7, what are the 4 lines I'm going to use?
Well, it's funny because my favorite line in that sequence is it's when he says it's time for a sharing of the green, father.
Me too.
You know, that's and I don't even think they use that, so I'm going to put that in. But that's the great thing about editing. You can, you know, it's better to have something and not need it than to not have something and need it. So that's always the should we shoot another piece of coverage? Do we get it? Well, let's just do one more, just in case.
That's right. That's just in case.
So the timeline for that is hopefully we'll be coming to Chicago. We'll be coming to Iowa on the 6th of November. 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. We'll be there, and then hopefully we'll get everything we need, and it'll be a lot of fun. And all of this material will be on the first. There'll be a physical media release of this with special features and everything. We did a few little interviews at the audio recording studio, and over 600 photographs were taken. So,
well, it's interesting to me that we're going to have this movie for the mind, right?
Yeah.
And then on the Blu-ray, I assume it's a Blu-ray.
Yeah.
We then also, but we do have a lot of actual, video footage because you're going to talk to me and you're going to talk to
all that's going to go on the disc.
and we're talking
Yeah.
about walking Todd around Chicago neighborhoods, and
Yep.
I mean it's going to be
No,
it's going to be unique. No one has ever done this. No one has ever tried this.
No, and for me, it's fun because obviously I have a 20-plus year history of creating Blu-ray special features and stuff, award-winning Blu-ray special features. And
Yeah.
what is fun for me is also it combines my love of doing things like in 5.1 and Dolby Atmos and surround. So it's going to be a cool package that hopefully, I mean, I'd love to see, the dream would be to get a cover for it like this. But with Heller as Stashwick, which and that would be something that would be part of the crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah.
Like that's not something we built into the budget of this thing. So, and then we could make prints of it and people could get prints of it and sign whatever.
It might even turn up as a T-shirt on Robservations.
I can guarantee you it would. So, I mean, let me ask you this. So this excites you, doing this project, because you have to write the scripts. And
Very
yes,
much. I've been doing. I've done 19 of these novels. I've got a couple more I would like to do.
And we can't call it. I mean, true crime and true detective, are sort of taken. So we're calling it.
Well, I think True Detective would make a great name for a TV show.
Me too. I wonder. So it's going to be called True Noir: The Case Files of Nathan Heller. Or the Nathan Heller Case Files.
I think Case Book. We're
Case Book, pardon me.
Yeah.
Yeah, a Nathan Heller Case Book.
Well, I have to tell you, I was in a meeting with all the HBO and Cinemax executives about Quarry. And I actually dinged them about taking the title True Detective because they were wanting to talk to me about Heller at that time. and I said, well, I have a really good title for the series, but somebody stole it from me, And my wife is just like.
By the way, speaking of that, Irene Jobson says, Max, did you say your wife's name is Barb?
My wife's name is Barb, and it's a perfect name for her because she's the sweetest person in the world. But there is a Barb in there. There is, I really believe that that Charles Dickens must be in heaven just writing everybody's name because her maiden name was Mull, and she's definitely somebody who mulls things. My name's Max, which is, self-explanatory. And, what can I say? You're also, I know why we're friends already. It's that you're another three-namer. Right?
Yeah, well, and that was kind of foisted on me. I mean, I did not, it's such a funny thing, because when I grew up, I was Bob. My mom calls me Bob. Everybody calls me Bob.
I was Al.
So
seriously,
that's so funny, so when I moved to LA in '88, I'm like, I'm gonna call myself, because my real name's Robert, and I never went by Robert. I figure, okay, I'd lived in Seattle my whole life. I grew up in the same house my entire life. Now I moved to LA 2 weeks after my 21st birthday. So when I got to LA, and there was gonna be all these people I mostly didn't know, so I introduced myself as Robert. That lasted about a day. Nobody would call me Robert. Everybody called me Rob. And I didn't like Rob because this girl that I was madly in love with, my girlfriend, we broke up because I was moving to California, and her new boyfriend, and then later her husband is named Rob. So I'm like, why are people calling me Rob? And then when I worked on Texas Chainsaw Massacre through Leatherface, I got my first screen credit, which was Rob Burnett. And then there's another Robert it was Robert Burnett. And then if you have the same name, they want you to change your name in the credits so it's not confusing. So I said, okay, well, I guess I'll use my middle name. My Meyer is my father's. Meyer was my grandfather's first name. My grandfather immigrated from Germany. German Jew immigrated. So Robert Meyer Burnett was my full name. I just thought it was sort of pretentious, but I kept it because I kept it for the credits. But
yeah.
And what's funny was I never called myself Robert Meyer Burnett. I was always Rob, Bob, whatever, until I went onto YouTube. And then everybody started calling me Robert Meyer Burnett, which is so funny because I never say it out loud. And how did you become Max Allan Collins?
Well, I'm Max Allen Collins Jr., and my father was well known in the community, and he was Max, and I was Al. And to this day, people are in this community very confused about what to call me because they knew me for like 30 years as Al, and everybody else is calling me Max. And I'm even sometimes announcing myself as Max, although my wife calls me Al and Allan, because that was. But it really came about because there's another mystery writer. I think he's deceased, who wrote under the name Michael Collins, and it was a pseudonym, but he predated me. Okay, right. And he initially, when I came out as Max Collins, I started as Max Collins, which wasn't my idea either. That's just the name that the book publishers decided sounded more like a mystery writer than Allan Collins. And Don Westlake once said to me, "Well, Allan Collins that sounds like every name in the phone book. So just stick with Max." And so I did for a while. And then this guy, Michael Collins, complained to me about that I was using something too close to his name. And I told him, there was another Michael Collins. I mean, right?
Yeah, they made a movie about him.
They made a movie about it. So I just said, and his name is Dennis Lins. And I said, well, okay, I'll start calling myself Dennis Lins because that was his real name. And so he didn't take that too well, although he was a nice guy. But at any rate, I published a book called The Slasher, and he published a book called The Slasher, not knowing about it, at the same time. At the same time. They're out at the same time. And so in some of the bibliographic accounts, it would say Slasher by M. Collins, and we didn't know which was which. So I decided I'll put the Allan in, Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
And then at least I've got my name in there a little bit. Right. I've got my name in there a little bit as the middle name. But then, of course, everybody in the business started calling me Max. And I introduced myself as Max, and I answered to Max. And I've got long friendships where they call me Max. And I just don't call me late for lunch. That's all.
Well, Max Allen Collins is such a cool name, though.
It's kind of pretentious, though. I know what you're saying about Robert Meyer.
I mean, because I'm thinking like Francis Ford Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola presents. But what's really interesting is people that I've met, like Mexican Iron Man, who's a really nice guy who helped us when we were moving and stuff. Mexican Iron Man started just calling me RMB, and I like the way the tone in his voice when he would say RMB. I'm like, that's pretty cool,
Well, I get MAC a lot. I do get MAC a lot.
Yeah, and it's I like it.
And it's Mac. It's Mac, and that's what they named the. So Corey did not have a first name in the books, and they called him Mac in the
show
to honor me. Although a lot of it didn't particularly honor me, to be quite frank with you. You mentioned this earlier, and I think this is so key. I liked the Corey TV show. I think they did a good job, but they left the humor out, and the humor is what leavens it, and the humor is what makes him so human that when he does something despicable, it throws you. And and I always tried to. I don't do this as much now, but for years with the Corey books, I always had him do something really heinous in the first chapter. Again, it's your chance to get off the train. Okay, this is who he is. Then he would be more nicer during the book. He would seem like and then he'd meet a woman who transformed him and touched that part of him that had gone dead. And then toward the end of the book, he'd do something heinous again. That was just because I want to say, that's who this guy is. Who are you identifying with? Because I felt people were getting a free ride in even my books, Nolan books, and the Parker books, because you're getting a free ride. You're getting this buzz, this buzz out of it. But real criminals kill people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it.
200 Watt Studio says Max was the Heller Capone novel True Detective, and that's the first one, right?
Yes, Capone is in the first novel.
Yeah, and so we're doing that, and then Irene Jobson says so you can read the books
like watching CSI. You can jump in wherever.
Pretty much. If I were going to suggest to people, I would say either read the first 3 books or just wait and listen to our podcast based on the books. That will ground you in who he is. And then you'll pick up very quickly about, it's sort of like pre-war Heller is kind of more of a wise guy. He's younger. After the war, he's very badly traumatized during World War II. We take him to unlike most private eyes who have this in their background. I take you to Guadalcanal with Nate Heller, and he comes back damaged, as so many people do from war. I mean, we got one going on right now, which is horrific, and is hard to, I'm reminded of when I created Quarry. Was a lot of Quarry was that we were sitting with our TV trays and our TV dinners, watching body bags being loaded up.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was getting, and we were all getting numb to this. Numb. And so that was part of what Quarry was about. But then I do like to do black humor, and so there's a lot of black humor in Heller, and I think that's what or Quarry, and that's what makes Quarry very readable. And the other thing that I find interesting about readers and critics, take somebody like Quarry or Heller, who serves up a lot of rough justice. I mean, he's like Mike Hammer. He is like Mike Hammer, where he'll just shoot the guy if that's the only way he can create justice. You have a sense that these are real people reacting in a way that they might, and you've got to face it, that these are also not perfect people. They're flawed, and that makes them, I think, more real.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to delving into, obviously, more of Heller's world, and I think just seeing the actors that we're going to put together and the cast that we're going to go after, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to create a great project, that honors your work, and hopefully it'll bring more attention to the whole series. And to know, once again, everybody, the new Nathan Heller novel, Too Many Bullets, is out today. Which you can get it in softcover and hardcover.
Actually, you can't. I sent the softcover. I sent you one, but it's an ARC. It's a advanced reading copy.
Oh, it is an ARC. Okay.
This will be out in paperback, but you have to wait for a year.
Yeah, just get it in hardcover. The hardcover is too cool, man.
I mean, what if you were hit by a bus in a couple weeks?
Yeah, this hardcover is dope, and it's I just love it. It's what did you write? Let's see. Did you write something great in here for me? I don't know. To Rob Burnett, the first of these I've signed. Collect them all. All right.
And I'm glad to say that they're all in print.
Yeah.
Which you can't say about all 19 book series.
Right, which is really, really good. And, Hard Case Crime, I'd love it if we could put out the physical media under their banner. It'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
Because...
Well, I have an inside track there.
It could be fun. I mean, obviously, again, it right now we've recorded this proof of concept, so we're in the experimental phase to try and make it as good as, I mean, when I listen to the Sandman audio drama that's like the 13 now, the first one, when I first listened to it, I was blown away. I mean, so there's incredible stuff. So that's the kind of, it's going to be A-list all the way. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to meeting you face to face and compiling all this video and working with Todd Stashwick and all the other actors, hopefully, that we can get. And I
hope we can think of something to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, you're pretty quiet. You don't really have a lot. I've
been working on it coming out of my shell.
Maybe you can get Barb to help you with that.
Barb helps me with a lot of keeping me in my place.
You don't think she can get you to open up more though?
I think she's opened me up plenty, and she's probably. I mean, if she's still watching the show by now, I'm surprised. It's strictly your presence, not mine.
Oh,
That's for sure.
I don't know. I think she'd love to see your presence on the internet. Who doesn't?
Well, and we write together.
Yeah. No, I
We are
know.
we are Barbara Allen,
Yeah.
and there's the Allen again. Yeah, and
Would-
they're funny books. They're just. She has
Wait,
such a great sense of humor.
Do I have one of these?
Yeah, did I give you one of those?
I'm sure you did. But
I'll pick a good one out for you.
it probably, yeah. But I think you did. I just don't have it in the stack. 200 Watt Studio says that he loved getting I, the Jury from classic flicks, and it has a fantastic commentary by you as well.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I should say that you also sent one to me. So you're also supplying me with physical media, which I love. So this is what's
Watch it in 3D.
I know.
Definitely watch it in
Oh,
3D.
absolutely. So that's very cool to have this now in his first motion picture. Blasts you out of your seat, Biff Elliott. So this is very cool to have that.
Okay, so what Star Trek was Biff Elliott on?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I know I should know.
I think it's the one. What is the one about the where they do the operation using mud on the creature, the Horta?
Well, that's Devil in the Dark. I think you're right,
I
actually.
believe that opens with Biff Elliott getting killed.
Schmitter. You might be right about that. I'd have to look into that. But, yeah. So thank you for sending me that. 200 Watt Studio also says, wait, where was I going? I'm very much looking forward to these audio dramas. I've been a fan of old-time radio, Whistler, X-1, etc., plus Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who. I love those. Those are great. And then he also says he loved getting I, the Jury from classic flicks. And then a fantastic commentary, which I read. So
I learned how to write dialogue by listening to Dragnet.
that's incredible. And why not? And by the way, Dragnet is still good.
It's great.
There's this YouTube clip from Dragnet where they're talking to these hippies. Have you seen this clip when they're talking about the generation that comes before them, and they're talking to the hippies? It's a great clip, and it's so good. I mean, Joe Friday. It's classic Joe Friday. It's so good.
Well, the movie is the movie from the 50s which is I think in CinemaScope is really, really good, and it's a good example to show what that show was before they kind of moved into the 70s and were old men.
Well, yeah.
Shouting at clouds. But it was a great. Jack Webb was the Orson Welles of early TV.
He really was.
Any TV crime show or detective show before Dragnet was a joke.
Yep. And then it still holds up. It's great that we're getting, Kino Lorber's putting out Columbo on Blu-ray. Hasn't come out yet, but getting all those on Blu-ray is going to be great. So besides all of this, what else do you have coming up? What else is going on for you?
I'm doing a little movie. It shoots October 23, and it is called Blue Christmas, based on a novella of mine, and it is calling it a micro budget movie is probably bragging. If we were all getting paid, it probably would be about $500,000, but we're dealing with about 16,000.
All right.
I mean, but I love the story, and the cast had a table read last night, and they blew me away. They were fabulous, and I hadn't done one since I think the last one I did was in 2006, and I've had a few health problems, and I basically wanted to see if I could still do this.
Sure.
It really is, and so that I know whether I'm done or not. And I'll keep writing screenplays if I'm done, but the two places I'd rather be in the world are an edit suite or on set.
Me too.
That's where I would most. And I like watching movies too. I ordered one yesterday called The Hills Run Red. I haven't seen it yet. I'll let you know how it is, Bob.
It has it's one of the most self-indulgent Blu-rays ever made.
Good.
I think there's 8 hours, 10 hours of special features if you listen to the audio commentaries too. Yeah, it's
Do you get tired of people telling you that they really like Free Enterprise?
No, I never. Well, it's kind of a forgotten movie now because not a lot of people have seen it. I'm hoping next year is its 25th anniversary. So I'm hoping that the man who owns it has not really been forthcoming or let us touch it. And that's another thing. I mean, I would love to do a restoration of it and actually make some changes in it because I've learned a little bit about editing since then, so I can make it better. Nobody would notice, but it'd be great to just get back in there and really make it sing.
The thing about if you're a filmmaker, and in a very, very minor way, I'm a filmmaker. Okay, I'm not. I don't brag about it, but I do know that if there's something you didn't like in the film and they just settled for it, went on, it will bother you 10 years later. It will bother you 20 years later. It will bother you 30 years later. You will never ever get over it. So if you can fix it, fix it.
Well, what's really interesting, I have a version of Free Enterprise that I've made that it's kind of my work version of what I want to change. And one of the things that I'm going to change if I ever get to do it is, there's so many references and in-jokes, but the movie is set in the time it was made. So it's now a period piece of the late 90s. And I thought, because I've never directed another movie, that I wanted to do like a trilogy of movies of that era, and they would all start with the same subtitle, which is The Near Present. So they could be taking place and it didn't have to be our world. You could change things up. Like in a way, The Hills Run Red takes place in the near present. But so what I want to do is that doesn't make any sense anymore because we're not in the near present. So what I want to do is there's all these jokes in the end credits, and the movie's set in 1999. So I'm going to use the Blade Runner font that says Los Angeles 2019, and I've already done this, and it says Los Angeles September 13th, 1999, and that's how it's going to open. And September 13th, 1999 is the day that the moon was blown out of Earth's orbit in the Space 1999 TV series. Sure. Because in the end credits of the movie, it says because we have all these fake credits, and it says buried in the end credits, September 13th, 1999, the day the moon left Earth's orbit. So
keep his name alive through continuing the books. I felt I had to do another pass on that, But one of the things we did when we looked at it was I was thinking of opening it up because I actually had an earlier, longer cut that I could have restored. But I really liked what he did so well that I couldn't bring myself to touch it. And so I did stuff at the front and I did stuff at the back. Okay, Mickey's passed away. Now here's what's happened since then. And it went from 47 minutes to 61 minutes. And sometimes you find the things that, and this is kind of contradicts what I said before, but sometimes you find the things that bother you are so ingrained into the film that it seems wrong. Do we really want George Lucas tinkering with Star Wars endlessly?
Yeah, no.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And as a filmmaker, you have to ask yourself that: am I just being even more self-indulgent than usual? It's a hard one. I think it's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. Hopefully, these things that we're making now, these audio dramas, we won't have that problem. We're going to get them exactly the way we want them.
We'll get them right out of the gate.
Yeah, we're going to get them right out of the gate. By the way, our composer, if you go back and you listen to the opening credits of the show, the Robservations intro, the music, now our composer, Alexander Bornstein, who actually did compose the Robservations theme, he did some sketches. His first, I brought him on, same thing. I said, listen, you're going to score them, but I just want you to give me some sketches, whatever you come up with just right off the bat. And I've worked with Alex on Axanar, and then I've worked with him on a couple of feature films. I got him a job to score a movie that I was editing back in 2015 called what do you mean? Well, how come I can't think of this movie that I edited? It's called A Paradox, Paradox, directed by Mike Hurst. And he did it. He did a great job. And what he does is, he uses a lot of computers and stuff, but then he brings in actual players. So the piece of music that you hear on the beginning of this, which he did, has alto sax and trumpet. And those are real players. Those are not synthesized trumpets or saxophone.
Yeah. I've done that a couple times. There's a guy named Chris Christensen from your part of the world who's done some of my scores, and he does that too. He by bringing in the real sax and the real trumpet and so on, it just elevates it.
Totally.
It isn't just but it's tricky. But that is, I think, a very good idea.
Yeah, and I told him, I said I wanted L.A. Confidential, Chinatown, John Barry's Store for Body Heat, even though it's not necessarily period specific, but that kind of a thing, whatever that noir, and it needs to sound lush. And
we're calling it true noir, so we really want to have that feel. I think that's
I think he did a great job. And when he's going to come, and those are just his first two initial sketches. And I can't wait to see the score of all these things. So it's going to be great. And
it's so important. I mean, think about, and of course, this dates me as if it, I'm not dated with everything I say, but Peter Gunn, the Peter Gunn thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just like you immediately, and it was so out there at the time.
Yeah.
So completely out, and it still kind of is.
Well, it's funny when
that
Art of Noise redid that theme in the 80s, and it was
probably the James Bond theme grew out of that. And
yep.
I don't want to think about what those early James Bond movies would have been without the music.
Oh my God. And you had Monty Norman's theme, and then you had John Barry come in and refine that score. In movies like on Thunderball, the track just 007, with the chase, the water chase piece of music. I mean, even that stuff, or Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and you hear those iconic pieces really set. I honestly think that when they had David Arnold come and do the Pierce Brosnan movies, that was pretty good. I mean, he was emulating.
Yeah. That's smart.
Yeah, I thought it was good stuff. I missed that. I don't know. Let me ask you a question since you brought up Bond. Do you think James Bond can still work in the movies today?
Not sure. And that's not a very good answer. I think it's amazing he worked as long as he did.
Right.
And I like the Craig movies better than you do, I think. I kind of think he died at the last movie. Maybe it's time he be dead.
I agree with you. I mean, look, as much as I
hate to say that, but
I mean, I just think he's a product, as M says in GoldenEye. You're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur. You're a product of the Cold War, which, and Judi Dench's delivery of that was great. I mean, I think Casino Royale is a fine film, but
it's really good.
But the Bond movies, Craig's Bond movies, they're not fun anymore. And they're also Casino Royale's a lot of fun, but I'm a Quantum of Solace apologist, but I know everyone loves Skyfall because it's really the Dark Knight. They're emulating. It goes back to what Bond did in the 70s. Oh, blaxploitation, let's make Live and Let Die. Oh, martial arts movies, let's make Man with the Golden Gun. And it wasn't really until Spy Who Loved Me that Bond found its way into the, this larger than life. Yeah, it's got an undersea kingdom, and we've got an oil tanker that splits open and steals submarines, which will take from You Only Live Twice, but it worked anyway. And it was. I mean, that was the first Bond movie I saw in a theater. Well, never mind. I won't date any of us, but it was,
you're a kid.
I know. I'm a kid, and Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun were not widescreen movies, Diamonds Are Forever was a widescreen. You had Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Goldfinger that were 166, maybe 185. Then Thunderball was the first widescreen movie, and Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and Diamonds Are Forever were widescreen epics. And then they went back to the Dr. No, for Live and Let Die, Man with Golden Gun. But Spy Who Loved Me was a return to this giant epic widescreen, and that was the first Bond movie I saw in the theater, and it came out just a few months after Star Wars did. And it blew. I was a huge Bond fan growing up as a kid, watching him on TV. But seeing that movie in the theater was almost as exciting as seeing Star Wars was.
Imagine being a kid. I was in junior high, reading Fleming, okay, digging Fleming, then seeing the first James Bond movie.
Oh, dude, I can't even. I've thought about that a lot. You hear about how Kennedy loved the Bond movies, or Bond books and the Fleming books. I mean, so many people love those books. It would have been to have read those books first and know they were going to make a movie, and to go see,
that was it. Drag my parents.
I mean, like you said, I mean, it would have been mind-boggling to see that. I mean, it was, and I've had some experiences, not on the level of necessarily Bond, but there's certain Stephen King, like I used to read Shawshank Redemption, or Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption every year for Christmas, just because I love that story. And when I saw it on film, 94, I was like, this is the greatest adaptation of anything I'd ever seen. Because I was like, this better not suck. But it was, because I was like a really like, and Frank Darabont, that was his first big theatrical feature. He'd made The Woman in the Room and stuff, but he'd written things like Chuck Russell's The Blob remake and stuff. But I'm like, okay, I'm a fan, but it wasn't like seeing Bond. Having read those books and seeing Bond, I mean, it would have been. It
was really something. And I mean, it sounds strange to say that moment could be that transformative in my life. Was sitting in a movie theater in Davenport, Iowa, but just when he said when Connery said Bond, James Bond, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And then to watch around me, my friends get caught up in the mania, which I had, I presaged the whole thing, and that, so by the time then I'm sitting with my friends watching Goldfinger on the first day it opens, and they haven't, and I didn't have the same experience I had. I earned it, I earned it. And I am a big Bond fan. I'm a Dalton fan, though, I have to tell you.
Oh, I'm too. Well, I loved Dalton as Bond, and I'm a big Living Daylights fan. Yeah. I was not a big License to Kill fan. I thought License to Kill could have been great, but they filmed so much of it in Mexico, and it's not because it's in Mexico. I don't mind that. It looked cheap. They were trying to save money. It felt like a overblown Miami Vice episode to me, because they're going after a drug dealer, and I understand.
He was a wonderful Bond, though. I mean,
he was great.
He's so underrated as a Bond.
He was, and I really loved him in Living Daylights. And Michael Kamen's score for License to Kill I don't think is very good, and the opening theme song, Wayne Newton, but it's got two great Bond girls in it. Talisa Soto is hot.
It's hard to rate any film co-starring Wayne Newton super high.
And young Benicio del Toro as a henchman.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I mean, it's not I like even bad Bond movies. I like. It's just one of those franchises I'll just watch. It doesn't annoy me like a bad Star Trek movie does, or a bad Star Wars movie does.
We've mentioned my wife a couple of times, and I have to tell you that she always has gone to Bond movies with me the day they opened, and is as enthusiastic about them. We sat through You Only Live Twice in the theater.
Wow.
Back to back. that's a woman to hold on to.
So you've been with Barb for quite some time.
Quite some time, and she's still a dish. I mean, it sounds like I'm just trying to get in good with her, which I'd like to get in good with her, but she is a dish still.
I mean, if you're still trying to get into good with her since, I don't mean to date you, but 1967, I'd say you're doing all right.
Yeah,
Not bad.
We've been together since, I think it was, I was probably 66 to tell you the truth. So, yeah, and we got married in 68.
Wow. So you could have gone to see Planet of the Apes.
Oh, we went to that together, and she's, and it's funny because she came from a home where she had hardly seen any movies in theaters. I said, "What movies have you seen?" Well, my dad took me to Son of Flubber, and I'm like, "Well, okay, all right." And then I took her to everything, and she, but there were times that I made bad judgments. Honeymoon Killers was not something you take a girl to.
That's still good, though.
Deliverance.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
Frenzy,
okay.
Frenzy. The strangulation scene in Frenzy.
Oh, yeah.
Do not take a woman to that movie.
So let me ask you, though, the two of you as a couple, what is your go-to movie snacks?
Oh, gee. Well, this is very boring, but we're both pretty much popcorn. I mean, it really-
but nothing else. You never had a little M&Ms in the popcorn to get that little kick.
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Well, we get the kiddie meal, which has the M&Ms and the popcorn and and the
because you got the salt and the sweet. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Our friend John Suntress from the Word Balloon podcast is here.
I know John.
I know. He says, "Hey guys, didn't Dennis Lins write shadow novels?
He
Very
did.
psyched for the Heller project and talking to you guys on my podcast about it. We will absolutely come on. I've been talking to
Sure.
John for years. He's a great guy. Obviously part of Chicago, the whole Chicago scene, Chicago broadcasting scene.
He is right that Dennis Lins, Michael Collins did write at least one shadow, and I think he wrote two. Maybe John knows.
Yeah, that I don't know. So John would know.
But that you talked about my about my movie novels, and I was very lucky to get some really good ones. I mean, I got to do Saving Private Ryan, and but I also got to do all these different genres that they wouldn't let me write. So I did Waterworld and Dark Angel, which are science fiction, obviously, and that was one of the great joys of that. But also, I got to do some things where I loved the property, and I got to do Maverick, and that was just, and I wrote it in the first person, and I buried all the lyrics of the song within the book, and people would come back. People would notice it and come tell me. Maybe 5 people told me that. Like, well, you were doing that. That was the Riverboat Ring Your Bell. They're just telling me all this stuff. Yeah, that's right. It's total self-indulgence, and they paid me.
They should have hired you to write the Wild Wild West novelization.
Oh, well, I wrote the I Spy, but I was delighted, and then I got it and found out that Eddie Murphy was the Robert Culp character, and I forget who it was, but they had switched the racial mix.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's wrong. I mean, it's wrong. It's just wrong. But I wrote it anyway.
Right.
Because they gave me the money.
Yeah, I mean...
See, this goes back to Nate Heller, because I had a publisher at that time that said, you write too much. You write too much. And I said, well, I'm trying to make a living. And he said, you write too much. You write one Heller a year, and you can have a contract. Then I found out that I could write the novelizations, and they didn't count them. So that's why I started writing novelizations. So I do 2 novelizations a year and a Heller, basically, was what I would do. Then I could make a...
Wow. Do you have a favorite novelization that you wrote?
I do kind of like the Maverick, but I think probably the best one I wrote was Daylight, which was not
the Sylvester Stallone novel.
Yeah. Now, settle down. Here's the deal. I was kind of hot for a while, and I turned 2 down, And my agent came to me with Daylight, and he said, and I said, I don't want to do this. This is a terrible script. And he said, you're absolutely free to do that, but after turning 3 down, you'll never get another one. So you better do it. And so I took it, and it was about a disaster it was a disaster a couple of ways, but it's a disaster in a tunnel.
But they shot it in Italy.
Yeah, and so what I did was I did it as, and I didn't get asked permission for this, and I got away with it. I did it as a documentary. I interviewed all the survivors, and so I did it in like 8 first-person voices, and I didn't give Stallone one because I wanted, if someone picked the book up and hadn't seen the movie, I didn't want them to know whether he lived or died. And I got more compliments on that, and it was they did a full voice. Speaking of what we're up to, they actually when they did the tape, the audio tape they did a full cast because I had done all these characters. I had like 8 first-person voices.
Wow.
But the thing about those kind of jobs is, and I kind of bet you've been in this position, you've got to, sometimes the job doesn't necessarily look like something that's going to fulfill you as a person, and so you've got to find a window into the work.
Yes.
You've got to find a way into the work. So if they give me the Scorpion King and I go, oh my God, then I can go, I'll write an Edgar Rice Burroughs novel.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was why I think I really did some really good novels in those movie novels. And then I got to do some really big. The U-571 was good, and The Wind Talkers, which was a John Woo movie.
John Woo movie, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did some, Air Force One. So I got to be Tom Clancy.
It's funny you said, because I always think of Air Force, because they never made executive orders. They never had Jack Ryan become president. So like he does in the books. So Air Force One is the unofficial. It's my Jack Ryan trilogy that follows. Well, you got Hunt for Red October, which is great, but that can stand alone. And then you got Patriot Games, you've got Clear and Present Danger, and Air Force One. To me, they're all Jack Ryan.
Yeah, I agree. But I thought it was really good for me at that stage of my career because it allowed me to do different kinds of things. Because I was on a trajectory that I was perfectly happy with, but to be able to do, I did all 3 Mummy,
right.
the 3 Mummies with the Brendan Fraser one. I did all those, and I kind of treated those as a combination between Universal Horror and Indiana Jones, which is of course what they were trying to do.
Right.
And
your books don't have bad CGI.
That's true. But I didn't mind doing those books. I did. And again, what I think made it tolerable for me, or sometimes even fun, even not fulfilling, but I was able to do my own. Nobody ever bothered me about the dialogue, so I could just, as long as I could write my own dialogue, what do I care?
Right.
Yeah. And so Saving Private Ryan was probably the best seller of all of them. It got on New York Times, and so I'm a New York Times bestselling writer, not because of any of my stuff, but because I got on 3 or 4 times. Well, I guess Road to Perdition was
Nathan
on.
Heller, Too Many Bullets, and then of course last month, you can't sleep on that. Last month came out. Wait, where did I put it? Somewhere here. Here it is. Mickey Spillane and Max Allan Collins dig 2 graves. You've got 2 books in 2 months. So everybody, go support Max, and go support these characters and his writing. Nathan Heller, if you want to get a preview of what we're doing.
I better mention Antiques Foe, because that's my wife's, co-written with my wife, and I try to stay straight with that woman.
I don't know if I didn't have that one. So I would have put it up here.
Well, it's
show it.
One.
Yeah, I don't have that. Okay, wait, scoot. There you go. Lift it up a little bit. There you go. Look at that. Antique
That looks like a
Phil
tough
button.
guy writer wrote it.
I love it. What a great cover. That's a hilarious cover. All right, there you go. Now, did that just get published too?
Yeah, well, it is actually not out till November 10, I think.
So your household has a book that came out in September, October, and November?
December's looking bleak.
25% of 2023 was full of books from your house.
Well, they aren't. Sometimes there'll be months and months and months and months with no books, but they just kind of they publish them when they want to.
Well, that's pretty good. We'll have to have you and your wife come on, and you can tell us the secrets of a successful marriage.
Well, I can give you one. My office is on the second floor, and her office is on the first floor.
Well, I can see that being okay. Do you have separate bathrooms?
Kind of, in a way.
Yeah, well, there you go. So that's good.
But I was bragging to you about her because I think she's quite an incredible woman.
Well, I mean, it's amazing you still feel that way after all this time. I'm telling you, that's what you got to write. Now you have to write the self-help, how to have the greatest marriage ever book.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of I'm trying to think of a nice way to say you got to eat the occasional pound of shit, that
That's probably not a good cover. That's not a good title.
no, but maybe it could be chapter 7. Because I mean, I think even in friendships you have to do that. I mean human beings are the worst. I mean they are. I mean,
oh, we've had plenty of evidence in the last couple days of that,
haven't we? I mean, it's like I always say that we're the top species by default.
Yeah, are we though the top species? Like by default, yeah.
We think we are.
A reckoning will come. Well, listen, I could keep you forever, but I want to bring you back lots on the show to promote our future endeavors.
This is great to be able to sit and talk with you, and I feel it's so natural just to interact with you this way.
Do you drink alcohol?
I am not a drinker. I'm not a teetotaler. I'm not that. But I'm not.
So I really haven't been drinking in the last. I haven't been drinking in a while. I just drink a lot of water now.
I see you chugging the water.
But
no,
but that doesn't mean I won't drink. I just don't drink anymore here or anything. So I was going to say we should, when I come out and see you in a couple weeks.
Throw a couple back.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, no. I just, I had some, not to get serious, but I had some alcoholism in my family. And I have, obviously, with this this collector aspect of my life, I could get in trouble easy if I really drank.
Oh, I definitely understand that.
Because I think it's the same kind of piece of the DNA that this desire to collect things and to have everything, and and I still have it. Then I watch physical media and see all the other stuff that I need to have.
I know. Although I'm getting, I don't know, I might be getting to that saturation point where, I had a long conversation with my friend Rob G last night, and he was talking about curating his collection. And I had a really interesting conversation with Dave Scow a couple weeks ago where he talked about the fact that fandom now, like young fans, we grew up as curators. Like we were people that were curating. We were like museum docents or something where, we had to know everything, and we would follow the paths that, like the story you told about all the different places and things that Mickey Spillane did. But we as collectors, we had to know all of those things. Mm-hmm. Like it was just, and we needed to collect everything to make, and it wasn't necessarily that anyone else would know, but the people that we knew would know. You had all of these things, and now there isn't that at all anymore. Like I talk to people who are fans, and it's not that they don't know anything, but they don't know anything, but they also are not interested in anything. In terms of I don't mean to say they're not interested, but they're not interested in the way that we were interested because they're not curators. And I was talking to Rob G last night, and I was like Vinegar Syndrome, which is a great label. And they're putting out these 4 discs at the end of the year. They're putting out the 4K of Mother's Day, the 4K of Blood-Sucking Freaks, and the 4K of Mark of the Devil. And I was saying, like, I didn't even like Mother's Day and Blood-Sucking Freaks. They actually were distasteful to me.
Yeah.
I didn't find them entertaining. Both of those movies I thought were mean-spirited and gross. And as gross, bring on the most horrible gore and violence. I'll watch a Serbian film. I'll watch Thriller, A Cruel Picture. But Blood-Sucking Freaks and stuff, I just don't. But I was saying to him, I'm like, but I'm conflicted because I think I should own it just to support what Vinegar Syndrome is doing and to curate this collection, because I can't not like have Mother's Day. They're doing such a good job. They're doing such a good job making these 4K, and I saw Mother's Day when it first came out, and Blood-Sucking Freaks was one of the first movies that I rented that I took home from the video store that bothered me. I was really bothered by Blood-Sucking Freaks, and I'm like, but now it's in 4K, and I'm thinking, it doesn't matter that it bothered me. I just need to get that great new Vinegar Syndrome copy of it.
One of the things that the Physical Media Show has done, and also our friend Heath, what is Heath's last name on Serial at Midnight?
Heath. Why am I drawing a blank? I just know him as Heath, but yeah, Serial. He's great. By the way,
guy. He's a wonderful guy, and he's struggling with some of these collecting things too. And I loved what you did with Dieter, and when he was shrinking everything down into little. your reactions just, and I was with you absolutely with you the entire way. But I mean, within just the last month, this is very, very sad. Okay, within the last month, I sat and had the thought, I'm only going to buy movies I like.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I know, but it's that weird look when they put out a new 4K of something, and it might be something I've owned in every format, but 4K is where it's going to end up. And it's like I'm buying things, I'm thinking, am I ever going to watch this again?
Yeah.
And Elizabeth had never seen The Mist, Frank Darabont's The Mist. Now, here's the thing. I don't love The Mist. It's well done, but I don't love it. And there's good scenes in it, but I'm like, oh my God, Lionsgate's putting out a 4-disc set. It's got the black and white. So I bought it, and I got it, and I hadn't watched it. It just got it a couple of days ago, and a couple of nights ago, I said to Elizabeth, I said, so are we going to watch Carlito's Way, or are we going to watch The Mist? And she's like, what is The Mist? And I go, you've never seen The Mist? I'm like, oh, we got to watch The Mist. And I'm watching this, and I realized I just don't like this movie as much as I want to like it. And I now have it on 4K, but if I thought about it, I feel like I need to have all of Frank Darabont's movies because I love Shawshank Redemption, I love Green Mile, and I kind of like.
Well, I can build a case for that because I buy books by authors that I love, even they're mediocre or not unsuccessful books. That impulse is, I do understand, but I have to tell you, and I'm going to, I think you'll like hearing this, even though it's kind of sad. And that is, I watched To Live and Die in L.A. on the.
You better watch your mouth.
I watched.
Watch your mouth.
To Live and Die in L.A. on just Blu-ray.
Okay.
And I said I really didn't like that movie when I think I told you that before I revisited it. Okay.
Okay, you're watching. You're on thin ice with me there for a minute.
Well, I ordered the 4K.
Good man. That's.
Have I redeemed myself?
You have that 4K is beautiful, by the way. That movie never looked particularly good on video, but they did it, and I understand a lot of people don't. I'll tell you something. I went to see, like 10 years ago, the Arrow here in L.A. was having a double feature of To Live and Die in L.A. and Thief. Michael Mann. Talk about it. Sure. To me, when someone says, what's your favorite movie that was made in Chicago, set in Chicago, bar none. It's not Blues Brothers. It's Thief. I know there's lots of other great Chicago movies, but in my mind, Thief is it. You know, the first time Free Enterprise opened in Chicago, and I said to everybody when I got there, I get to Chicago, I'm like, the Green Mill's real, right? I got to go to the Green Mill, the bar that he owns. And of course, everyone's looking at me going, it wasn't a place that people frequented.
No.
And they're like, and this is, so I saw Thief in 81, the weekend it came out, and this is now 1999. And people did not, and they didn't even know. I thought everybody in Chicago, like every single person in Chicago, would be like, "Oh yeah, the Green Mill, we got to go." Yeah. Nobody, not one person knew what I was talking about. And it's like, it's over by the stadium.
Yeah.
And I went there, and it was fucking great. It was like a jazz trio play. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. People didn't get it, but so when I went and saw those two movies together, watching Thief right up against To Live and Die in L.A., I was like, you know what? To Live and Die in L.A. is not as good as it's not as good as I remembered it, even though I've seen it a million times. But then, you know what? I went home and watched it again, and I'm like, nah, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Well, you remind me of what maybe my favorite television show, the first season of Crime Story.
Oh, so good. It's so good. It's so good.
I still have the Laserdisc box.
Oh, the first. Oh, it's so good. Crime Story is so good. It's better than Miami. I mean, the thing about Miami Vice was, I think the first two seasons of Miami Vice has the most disappointing last episode of anything I've ever seen. but no, Crime Story is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Love it. Well,
it's great.
Listen, I could talk to you forever.
All right. I will let you go.
This is fantastic.
I'm sure. Well, we got 2-3 listeners left.
We have 87 people right now.
Wow. You poor sick souls, but I admire
you. By the way,
you.
Everybody, I just want to remind everyone, Max Allan Collins' new book, Too Many Bullets, out today. His wife has a book coming out next month. What's it called?
Antiques Foe, written by both of us.
Written by both of you. And also, for more Mike Hammer, Mickey Spillane action, you can get Dig Two Graves, which came out last month.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, you will hear all kinds of updates about the True Noir, the Nathan Heller case books.
It's very exciting. I couldn't be more thrilled.
And you'll hear more about it. Of course, for the proof of concept, here was the cast and me. So I can announce that Todd Stashwick is in fact playing Nathan Heller. And Chris Carr, I've told everybody that what I want to do for this is I'm trying to create, instead of the Mercury Theater, the Venus Company of Players. Because you know Venus, the god of love, yeah. So we're gonna have the Venus players instead of the Mercury players. And hopefully we can put a cast together of great actors.
I know you will.
To bring, it's going to be good. I don't know what you've gone out of focus. Is that just because it's late?
I know. I actually look like this. This is
slowly going out of focus. But no, this is going to be great. It's great to see you, and it's been great to make your acquaintance and to have been peripherally enjoying your work for years now. And
when you run out, let me know. I'll send you another.
Oh, you've sent me. And hey, if you want, you can go back and look at Max Allan Collins' work on Batman.
And I am probably the most hated Batman writer in the entire DC universe. So
is that true? This is a great cover.
Yeah, I was actually quite and I still am in some circles, not very popular, because we followed Batman Year One, which was written by Miller.
Oh yeah,
but I had not seen it. They didn't show it to me.
Sure, right, yeah.
And I didn't have any editorial. And I wrote a very traditional Batman. I loved Dick Sprang and all of that stuff. And there were people that did not like what I did, and I thought it was kind of poorly edited, even though, frankly, it was Denny O'Neil who was a genius writer. But it was. I did it for a year, but I also did a thing called Batman Child of Dreams, which was a Kia Asamiya.
Dude, I have it. I have it. Yeah,
I have it. And I thought that was good.
Right over there.
And I also did.
It's fucking great. Come on.
Yeah, it's a good book. And then I did Batman basically meets Elliot Ness in one of the Elseworlds graphic novels. And then I did the first story in the comic strip, which is, I won't tell you the story, but we'll talk next time. I'll tell you the story of my brief happy life on the Batman comic strip with Marshall Rogers drawing it. Marshall Rogers, pretty great.
Oh, I mean, amazing. And I'm looking, by the way, I totally, you know what, I'm so remiss in that I totally forgot that you had done Child of Dreams. And it's incredible. So I want to show everybody before we go, because since you brought it up, it's amazing.
I think it's my favorite thing I did on Batman. Although I did like the story I did with Marshall Rogers and that was in the papers.
Well, yeah, but you got to see this, because this is the artwork. The interior artwork is, it's amazing. But here is, I'll see. The thing is, it's a horrible. I of course picked the wrong graphic, but here it is. Here's Child of Dreams. But I'm a huge fan of this. It was awesome. It is awesome.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, and let's see. It's in stock on eBay, and you can get it for the original hardcover for a paltry $94. So there you go. Not bad. Look at your works. Your works held its value.
Well, that's good. I mean, I like that one. That was a very early manga to be done over here, and we actually didn't flip. We flipped the pages. I used to have to go in the bathroom and hold it in the mirror. Seriously,
right? Because
what's going on. But I will mention in this can be my parting shot. I want to mention my son Nathan Collins, who is a Japanese to English translator, and he is the guy that is doing JoJo's Bizarre Adventures right now, which is a very big deal in the manga world. And he was the translator of the most recent edition of Battle Royale. So he is the real deal. I'm very proud of him.
Well, Max, I want to thank you for being here on Robservations.
I'm trying to decide whether I look better or worse this blurry. I think a case could be made either way.
Well, at least your name, your lower third, is in focus.
That's true.
I don't know why.
I really enjoyed this, Rob. It's great of you to have me on, and I am so looking forward to our collaboration in the weeks and months, and I hope years ahead.
It's going to be great, sir. I'm looking forward to it. Miss Tree, I got plans for that too.
Okay, we'll talk about her later.
Yes, we'll talk about her later. All right, Max. Well, thanks for being here. I very much appreciate it. Oh, before you leave, let me just do a real quick cursory glance and see if anyone threw any last question. Nope, we're good.
Okay.
So I will see you later, and this was a lot of fun. And we'll have to get you on Let's Get Physical Media or something, because I know you want to meet Dieter.
I would. I don't know if I could handle it, but I would really like to meet Dieter.
I can arrange that. Yeah. All right, sir. I will see you later. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, gentle beings, that was absolutely fantastic. The great Max Allan Collins. Go buy his books. He's a great writer. And on that note, I'm going to bring an end to this episode of Robservations. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being here. I want to thank John Suntress of the Word Balloon Podcast to jump in here. And if you haven't listened to the Word Balloon Podcast, there is many, many years of great creators that John talks to. So check that out. The Word Balloon Podcast. Check it out. And I'm looking forward to it. I think I might be able to meet him in person for the first time, hopefully, when I go to Chi-Town. So that'll be good. And I'll have more letters later. It's been tough because, again, preparing for the recording session for the Nathan Heller thing, I was obviously up in Portland for a couple of days shooting Crisis Medicine. You'll see a trailer for what we were shooting. It was pretty dope. to be honest. It was really cool shooting in this facility. And then I go back to Portland to shoot a whole class for the most of the week on the 17th of October through the 21st. So, yeah, and then to Chicago on the 6th through the 9th. But I'll be doing some broadcasts from there. And you know what? I was thinking, when I'm in Chicago, the Chicago area, if anyone's out there, maybe have like a meet and greet somewhere. Find a place, maybe at the Green Mill. Well, I don't know. Are there any imagination connoisseurs who are out there that would be interested in doing that? So hit me up, send me a letter, postgeeksingularity.com, and we shall see. So on that note, remember, every person, what do I say? Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better night.